My name is Meredith Shaw. I am 34 years old. And the moment that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family started with a single notification buzzing across a conference table during our quarterly review meeting. 23 people sat around me discussing projections and revenue forecasts, while my phone vibrated face down on the polished wood. I knew the pattern. The wedding group chat. My sister Vivian's wedding, 3 weeks away. I expected another debate about napkin colors or seating arrangements. I glanced at the screen, half listening to my colleague present slides about third quarter performance. The preview showed one line of text from my sister. "You are not invited to the wedding. Goodbye, loser." I blinked. Read it again. The words did not change. Then another notification appeared beneath it, a reaction to the message. My father had given it a thumbs up. The room kept talking. Someone laughed at a joke I did not hear. The projector hummed, and something inside me went very still. Not broken, still. Like a lock clicking into place. Like a door I never knew existed suddenly swinging wide open. I typed one word back. Fine. Set my phone down. Returned my attention to the meeting. But behind my calm face, a calculation had already begun. What they did not know, what none of them would understand until it was far too late, was that every single contract for that wedding had my name on it, my credit, my signature, my money. And I was about to take it all back. The meeting wrapped up 40 minutes later. Colleagues gathered their papers, chatted casually about weekend plans and client dinners. My supervisor, Linda, stopped by my chair as I collected my notes. "Great analysis on the Henderson account, Meredith. Really sharp work." I thanked her. My voice came out steady, my smile appropriately professional. Strange how your mouth can form words while your chest feels completely hollow. I had worked at Morrison & Klein for 8 years. Senior financial analyst, known for precision, reliability, calm under pressure. The one they called when accounts were tangled, when numbers refused to add up, when someone needed to untangle a mess without creating a bigger one. The fixer. A title I had earned. A role I had played my entire life. Walking back to my office, my phone vibrated again. Not the group chat this time. A separate text from my mother. Vivian told me she handled it. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be, Meredith." Handled it. Like I was a problem to be solved. A loose thread to be snipped clean. No explanation, no apology, no acknowledgement that they had just excluded me from my only sister's wedding through a group chat message. Just dismissal. Quick, efficient, final. I sat down at my desk and closed the office door behind me. The click of the latch felt significant. I pulled up both messages on my phone and stared at them side by side. The casual cruelty was what cut deepest. They had not even hesitated. Vivian's wedding to Derek Holloway was scheduled for 3 weeks from Saturday. Cedar Grove Estate, $45,000 for the venue alone. The catering contract totaled $28,000. Florist, $12,000. Photographer, $8,000. DJ, rentals, cake, officiant, miscellaneous expenses. The full total exceeded $100,000. And every single contract bore my signature at the bottom. Every deposit had come from my account. Every vendor had my name and my credit on file. The reason was simple, the same reason it always was. Vivian did not have the credit score to secure the venue reservation. Derek's money was supposedly tied up in some investment deal. My parents claimed things were tight right now and they would reimburse me after the wedding gifts came in. The same promise they had made 100 times before about 100 different expenses. I opened my laptop and navigated to the folder labeled Vivian Wedding Docs. Contracts filled the screen, PDFs of signed agreements, deposit confirmations, vendor timelines, payment schedules. My signature sat at the bottom of every single page, but something caught my eye as I scrolled. An email I did not remember seeing before. It had been forwarded from Derek's account to Vivian, time-stamped 2 weeks ago. The subject line read, "Weekend Plans," but the preview text visible in the forwarding showed a different conversation entirely. Intimate language, pet names, and the recipient was not Vivian. The name showing was simply the letter D. I stared at it for a long moment. Who was D? Why was this email buried in the wedding folder? I flagged it mentally but did not open it yet. One crisis at a time. This was not the first time I had been handled. That word my mother used, handled, like I was a situation rather than a daughter. Quick flashes surfaced without permission. 16 years old, my college fund quietly redirected to cover Vivian's private school tuition because public school was too stressful for her. 24 years old, my carefully saved apartment deposit borrowed for Vivian's fresh start in Dallas after a bad breakup. I never saw that money again. 29 years old, co-signing Vivian's car loan because her credit score was too low, then taking over payments when she forgot to make them for 8 months straight. Last Christmas, not appearing in the family photo because someone had to hold the camera and it might as well be Mary. Mary is fine. Mary can handle it. Mary does not need the same attention. The responsible one, the steady one, the one who never made waves. Until today. My phone buzzed again. The group chat. I opened it despite myself. Vivian had posted a photo of the bridesmaids at a dress fitting. Champagne glasses raised, smiles bright and careless. The caption read, "My girls, 3 weeks to go." The comments piled up beneath it. Heart emojis, exclamation points, messages about how beautiful everyone looked. No one mentioned my absence. No one asked where I was. I had not just been uninvited, I had been erased. I closed the group chat, opened a new browser tab, typed Cedar Grove Estate, and clicked on Contact. This was not about hurting them. That thought surfaced clearly, almost surprised me with its calm certainty. This was about stopping the bleeding. For years I had been the family's financial cushion, their safety net, their emergency fund with a pulse. They had taken and taken and taken, and called it love, called it what family does, called it Mary being Mary. What happens when the safety net walks away? What happens when steady, reliable Mary stops being available for everyone else's emergencies? What happens when consequences finally arrive? A memory surfaced without warning. Aunt Ruth at Grandma Eleanor's funeral 2 years ago. She had pulled me aside near the kitchen, her voice low and urgent. "Your grandmother's will. Did your father ever show you your copy?" My copy? Ruth's face had flickered with surprise, then concern. "Eleanor told me she made specific provisions for you. Separately." Before she could continue, my father appeared. "Ruth, Patricia needs you in the living room." His voice was pleasant, but his hand on her arm was firm. Ruth shot me a look that promised we would talk later. But later never came. I had asked my father about it afterward. He waved it off. "Ruth gets confused. Mom left everything to your mother, standard arrangement." But Ruth had not seemed confused. Ruth had seemed urgent. What had Grandma Eleanor left? Why did no one want to tell me? Another thread to pull. But later. First, the vendors. I picked up my phone and called the number for Cedar Grove Estate. The same coordinator I had spoken with a dozen times answered on the second ring. "Hi, Jennifer. This is Meredith Shaw. I need to discuss the reservation under my name for the Holloway Shaw wedding." "Of course." Her voice carried the same warmth it always did. "What can I help you with? I need to cancel the booking." The pause that followed was careful, measured. "I see. Can you confirm you are the account holder?" "Yes, the contract is in my name. The deposit was from my account." Another pause. "Ms. Shaw, I should let you know there will be a penalty for cancellation within 30 days. I understand. Please proceed. It took 4 minutes. 4 minutes to undo 6 months of planning. 4 minutes to remove the foundation from a $100,000 event." Jennifer's voice stayed professional throughout, but there was something underneath it. Curiosity, maybe. Or recognition. People do not cancel weddings 3 weeks out unless something has gone very wrong. After I hung up, I stared at my phone. No regret, no guilt, no second guessing. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after you finally stop running. My email pinged, cancellation confirmation from Cedar Grove. But there was another email right below it. The forwarded thread from Derek's account, now fully loaded. I clicked it open. The full chain appeared on my screen. The messages were not to Dee. They were to Diana. And the language was unmistakable. Plans to meet. Inside jokes. The phrase I cannot stop thinking about last Tuesday. Last Tuesday. When Derek told Vivian he was working late. My stomach turned, not because I liked Derek, I never had, but because I understood what this meant. My sister was about to marry a man who was actively cheating on her. The clock on my computer showed 5:23, 3 hours since I had sent my one-word reply. Fine. Someone must have called Cedar Grove. Someone must have discovered the cancellation. My phone exploded. Notifications cascaded down the screen faster than I could read them. Dad, call me now. Mom, Meredith, what have you done? Vivian, this is not funny. Vivian, answer your phone. Vivian, you cannot do this. Dad, you are destroying this family. Message after message after message. The panic had arrived. I read each one once. Then I did something I had never done in 34 years of being the good daughter, the responsible one, the fixer who never caused problems. I turned off my phone, set it in my desk drawer, and opened the next vendor contract. They wanted me gone? Fine. But they forgot one thing. I was not just the sister they could ignore. I was the name on every dotted line. And by morning, they would understand exactly what that meant. I drove home on autopilot that evening. The route from downtown Austin to my apartment in East Austin usually took 30 minutes, but I barely remembered any of it. Traffic lights changed colors. Other cars passed. The sunset bled orange and pink across the skyline. None of it registered. My hands stayed on the steering wheel even after I parked in my assigned spot at the apartment complex. Engine off, headlights dark. I sat there for 10 minutes, maybe longer, letting the silence settle around me like something physical. The weight of the day pressed down on my shoulders, not the meetings or the spreadsheets or the normal exhaustion of a Thursday in corporate finance. Something heavier. Something that had been building for 34 years and had finally cracked open. My apartment was dark when I stepped inside. One bedroom, clean lines, minimal furniture. I had paid it off early. One of the few financial decisions I had made purely for myself. The space was mine, controlled, predictable. I did not turn on the lights immediately, just stood in the doorway and let my eyes adjust to the shadows. The glow from the city filtered through the windows, enough to see the outlines of everything I owned. I set my bag down on the kitchen counter and realized I had not eaten since breakfast. My stomach felt hollow, but the thought of food made me nauseous. I made tea instead. Chamomile, the same kind Grandma Eleanor used to brew whenever I visited her beach house in Galveston. The smell hit me before the first sip. Honey and dried flowers, and something that felt like safety. A door opened in my mind, one I usually kept firmly closed. On my bookshelf across the room sat a framed photograph. Grandma Eleanor, captured mid-laugh on her porch in Galveston, the Gulf of Mexico sparkling behind her. It was the only family photo in my entire apartment. I walked over and picked it up, running my thumb across the glass. You would have hated what they did today, Grandma. But Eleanor Shaw had been dead for 2.5 years. Whatever she wanted for me had died with her. Or so I had been told. The tea cooled in my hands as I stood there, staring at her face, trying to remember the last time anyone in my family had looked at me the way she always did. Like I mattered, like I was enough exactly as I was. The memory hurt more than the text message had. Vivian was born when I was 6 years old. From the beginning, different rules applied to her, not because she demanded them, but because our parents created them. I remember being 8 years old, performing in my first piano recital. I had practiced for months. For Elise, every note memorized, every pause deliberate. My parents arrived late and left early because Vivian was fussy in her car seat. I played to a half-empty auditorium. My teacher told me I was gifted. My parents said, "That is nice, honey," and never mentioned it again. At 12, I won the county spelling bee. The same week, Vivian learned to ride a bicycle. Guess which accomplishment made it into the Christmas card that year? The photograph showed Vivian beaming on her pink bike with training wheels. I was not in the frame. By 16, the pattern had calcified into something permanent. My college fund, $23,000 saved by my grandparents over the years, was quietly redirected to cover Vivian's private high school tuition. Public school was too stressful for her, my parents explained. You are smart, Mary. You will get scholarships. Vivian needs more support. I did get scholarships, partial ones. The rest I covered with loans I am still paying off. I remember overhearing my mother on the phone once when I was 17. She thought she was alone in the house, speaking to Aunt Ruth in the kitchen. I had come home early from a study group and paused in the hallway when I heard my name. Meredith does not need us the way Vivian does. She came out complete. Vivian needs to be assembled. At the time, I thought it was a compliment. I carried those words with me for years, believing they meant I was strong, capable, independent. Now I understood what they really meant. Permission. Permission to overlook me. Permission to take from me. Permission to assume I would survive whatever they did because I always had before. Low maintenance, self-sufficient. The easy one. Translation. The one they could drain without consequence. I set down the photograph of Grandma Eleanor and opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dark apartment as I navigated to a file I had kept for years, but never shown anyone. A spreadsheet. Title, Family Loans Tracking. I had started it after the third or fourth time money I lent disappeared without acknowledgement. A way to keep myself sane, to confirm I was not imagining the pattern. The numbers filled the screen now, row after row of dates and amounts and descriptions. Age 22, graduation gift redirected to Vivian's sorority dues, $800. Age 24, apartment deposit for Vivian's Dallas move, $4,200. Age 26, car loan payments after Vivian defaulted, $14,600 over 3 years. Age 29, emergency loan to Shaw Construction, my father's company, $15,000 with promised interest that never materialized. Medical bills for my mother's elective surgery that insurance did not cover, $6,000. Credit card debt my parents racked up during a difficult quarter, paid off by me to protect their credit score, $11,000. The list continued, birthday gifts that were actually cash transfers, holiday loans that stretched into permanence, the countless small requests that added up to something enormous. I scrolled to the bottom of the spreadsheet. Total outstanding, $127,450. I had never confronted them with this number. Every time I tried to raise the subject, the conversation spun into guilt or dismissal. You are keeping score? That is not what family does. We have given you so much over the years. Do not be petty. The money was never the point. Respect was. They took my money because they did not respect me enough to stop. 6 months ago, Vivian announced her engagement to Derek Holloway. He was 32, worked in finance, and his family supposedly had money. The wedding was planned for October, an intimate gathering of 200 guests at Cedar Grove Estate. The venue alone required a $45,000 deposit, non-refundable. Vivian's credit was destroyed, her own doing after years of missed payments and maxed cards. Derek's money was tied up in some real estate deal he could not explain clearly. My parents' finances were tight right now, sweetheart. Everyone looked at me. The promises came wrapped in family obligation. We will reimburse you from the wedding gifts. Derek's bonus comes in November. Dad is closing a big contract next quarter. Same promises, different packaging, eternal pattern. I signed the venue contract. Then the catering contract. Then the florist, the photographer, the DJ, the rentals, the cake, the officiant. $102,000 spread across a dozen vendors, every single one bearing my name and my liability. But here is what I noticed and filed away without comment. Derek paid for the honeymoon himself. $15,000 for 2 weeks in Bora Bora. No hesitation, no tied-up funds, no requests for help. Vivian's wedding dress was custom-made, $8,500, paid from her own account. Everyone had money for what they wanted. Only the infrastructure, the boring parts, the contracts and deposits and legal liability, only those landed on me. Because Mary was safe. Mary would never say no. Mary would never walk away. Until today. Grandma Eleanor was the one person who ever saw me clearly. My mother's mother, widowed at 55, she had built her own life from the ground up after my grandfather left her with nothing but debt and broken promises. She bought a beach house in Galveston with money she earned herself, paid it off over 15 years, kept modest savings and lived within her means, sharp until almost the very end. She always made time for me specifically. Summer weeks at the beach house, just the two of us, walking along the seawall and talking about everything and nothing. She taught me to balance a checkbook before I was 12. Taught me to read contracts, to never sign anything without understanding every clause. Your grandfather left me with nothing but debt and broken promises, she told me once, sitting on her porch as the Gulf breeze lifted her silver hair. I learned the hard way. You will not have to. 2.5 years ago, I drove to Galveston alone. Eleanor was declining. Dementia had started creeping in, stealing pieces of her clarity day by day. I sat with her on that same porch, watching the waves roll in, holding her hand the way she used to hold mine. She grabbed my wrist suddenly, her grip surprisingly strong. Her eyes cleared for a moment, focused and urgent in a way I had not seen in months. I have taken care of you, Meredith. It is all arranged. Do not let them take it from you. Take what, Grandma? But the clarity faded as quickly as it had come. She smiled vaguely, looked back at the ocean, and started humming a song I did not recognize. She died 3 weeks later. My father handled all the paperwork, insisted on it. He said Eleanor left everything to my mother, her only surviving daughter. Standard arrangement. Mom was traditional. But Eleanor was not traditional. Eleanor was deliberate about everything she did, and she had never been particularly fond of my mother. The memory of Aunt Ruth surfaced again. The funeral reception, the crowded living room, Ruth pulling me aside near the kitchen with urgency in her voice. Your grandmother's will. Did your father ever show you your copy? My copy? Ruth's face flickered with surprise, then concern. Eleanor told me she made specific provisions for you. Separately. Then my father appeared, his hand firm on Ruth's arm, his voice pleasant but final. Ruth, Patricia needs you in the living room. She shot me a look that promised more. We will talk later. But later never came. I tried calling Ruth a week after the funeral. Her voice on the phone was strange, careful, guarded. I think I was mistaken, honey. Your father explained everything. Eleanor's mind was not clear at the end. Something in her tone said otherwise. But Ruth would not say more. And I, exhausted from grief, let it go. I had been letting things go my entire life. That was the problem. I turned my phone back on at 9:47 that night. The screen took a full minute to load all the notifications. 30 text messages from my father. 47 missed calls from my mother. 60 missed calls from Vivian. 14 voicemails, email notifications from Derek, Vivian, my mother, my father, all demanding responses. I scrolled through the messages, letting their panic wash over me without touching anything inside. Dad at 7:02, Cedar Grove just called. What have you done? Dad at 8:30. Answer your phone now. Dad at 11:05. You think you can hide? We will see about that. Mom at 9:15. How could you do this to your sister? Mom at 10:43. You are breaking this family apart. Mom at 11:20. Your grandmother would be ashamed. That last line landed differently than she intended. Your grandmother would be ashamed. She invoked Eleanor's name like a weapon, trying to wound me with the memory of someone who actually loved me. But Grandma Eleanor would not be ashamed. Not of me. One message stood out from the flood. Sent at 8:15 from Aunt Ruth. Meredith, I heard what happened. Call me when you can. Not at the house. My cell only. Short, careful, significant. I read every message from my family once, did not reply to any of them. The threats did not scare me. The guilt did not move me. They were just noise now, the sound of people realizing they could no longer control me. I saved Ruth's number separately. Tomorrow I would call her. Tomorrow I would cancel the remaining vendors. Tomorrow I would start researching Grandma Eleanor's estate, probate records, whatever public information I could find. And that email about Derek and Diana, I would decide what to do with that too. I closed my laptop and picked up Grandma Eleanor's photograph one more time. You tried to tell me something, did you not? You knew what they were. The photograph did not answer. But I knew where to start looking. First thing tomorrow. The courthouse. Probate records. Whatever my grandmother left behind, I was going to find it. They thought uninviting me would make me disappear. Instead, it woke me up. And now I was going to start asking the questions I should have asked years ago, starting with what happened to my grandmother's will. I woke before my alarm on Friday morning. The sky outside my window was still gray, the first hints of dawn barely visible over the Austin skyline. I had not slept well, my mind churning through everything that had happened, but I felt strangely rested. The kind of energy that comes from finally making a decision and refusing to second-guess it. I lay in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling, running through my task list for the day. Cancel remaining vendors. Call Aunt Ruth. Research probate records. The order mattered. Vendors first, while businesses were open and I could reach decision-makers directly. Then Ruth. Then whatever came next. I got up, showered, made coffee, and stood at the window watching Austin wake up beneath me. No hesitation. No regret. If anything, the resolve had hardened overnight into something that felt permanent. I checked my phone deliberately late, after breakfast, after I had centered myself for whatever storm was waiting. 47 new messages had arrived since I turned it off at 11 the previous night. I did not read them yet. One notification caught my eye before I could scroll past. A text from a number I did not recognize, sent at 2:34 in the morning. The preview showed part of the message. I know this is strange, but I need to talk to you about Derek Holloway. Please do not ignore this. I stared at it for a long moment. Someone reaching out about Derek in the middle of the night. Someone who had my number, but was not saved in my contacts. It could be a trap. It could be someone from the family trying a different angle of manipulation. But something about the timing felt genuine, desperate even. I filed it away for later. Important, but vendors first. At 8:30, I made my first call. Magnolia Catering Company. I used my work voice, the one I had perfected over 8 years of corporate finance, calm, clear, authoritative. This is Meredith Shaw. I am calling regarding the Holloway-Shaw wedding contract, account under my name. The coordinator, Beth, pulled up the file. I could hear her keyboard clicking through the phone. Of course, Ms. Shaw. How can I help you today? I need to cancel the contract effective immediately. The pause that followed held judgment, carefully concealed beneath professionalism. I see. You are aware there is a 30-day cancellation policy. Within this window, there is a 40% penalty on the total contract value. $28,000, 40%, $11,200, gone. I understand. Please proceed. Beth's careful question came next. Ms. Shaw, I am required to ask, are you canceling on behalf of the couple, or is this a personal decision? I am canceling on behalf of myself. I am the contract holder. Another pause. Understood. I will email the cancellation confirmation within the hour. After I hung up, I did the math. $11,200 in penalty. But $16,800 I would not have to pay in remaining balance. And more importantly, I was no longer liable for an event I had been banned from attending. While waiting for the confirmation email, I opened my wedding folder on the laptop, scrolled through contracts, checking cancellation terms for each vendor. That was when I noticed a document I did not remember creating. The file name read, Derek Prenup Draft Version 2. A prenup draft, in the wedding vendor folder. Why would a prenuptial agreement be saved here? I did not open it, not yet, but I bookmarked it. Another thread to pull when the time was right. The florist call at 9:15 was shorter. Blue bonnet floral design. The woman who answered sounded sympathetic, almost maternal. These things happen, honey. We will process the cancellation today. $12,000 committed. 50% penalty within 30 days. 6,000 lost, 6,000 saved. DJ Marcus answered his own phone at 9:45. Small operation, one-man show. I had liked him from our first conversation, straightforward and honest in a way the larger vendors were not. Meredith, what is going on? Everything okay with the wedding? The wedding is no longer my concern, Marcus. I need to cancel our contract. A long pause. Okay, look, I do not usually do this, but I am going to waive the cancellation fee. You have always been straight with me. The first kindness I had received in 2 days. Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that. Whatever happened, I hope you are okay. I hung up and realized my hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, from release. Each cancellation was a chain link breaking. Each phone call loosened the weight that had been pressing on my chest for months, years, my entire life. The photographer required a longer conversation. Amanda Chen ran a mid-sized studio and had been enthusiastic about the wedding from our first meeting. She answered on the third ring, her voice warm and slightly gossipy. Meredith, I was just about to call you. There has been some confusion about the package changes. My antenna went up immediately. What package changes? Amanda hesitated. Oh, I thought you knew. Derek called last week. He said you had approved some additions. What additions? He upgraded to our premium package, added the bridal suite session, the intimate morning of photos, and he requested a separate room booking at the venue for private couple shots the night before the wedding. My mind raced. Private room. Night before the wedding. Did he say why? Just that it was a surprise for Vivian. Very sweet, actually. He paid the difference himself. Cash, which was unusual. Cash. No paper trail. Derek had booked a private room at the venue, paid cash, and called it a surprise. But I knew what it really was. Last Tuesday. Diana. I cannot stop thinking about last Tuesday. Amanda, I need to cancel the entire photography contract. The whole thing? But Derek I am the contract holder. The original agreement is in my name. Please process the cancellation. Silence. Then, in a smaller voice, Of course, I will send the paperwork. I sat with the phone in my hand after hanging up, pieces connecting in my mind. Derek was not planning a surprise for Vivian. He was planning something else entirely. A private room the night before his wedding, paid in cash so there would be no record. Diana, the emails, the intimate messages. He was planning to see her. To spend his last night as a single man with the woman he was actually in love with. For a split second, I felt something like pity for my sister. Vivian, cruel as she had been, did not know. Did not know her fiancé was arranging secret rooms. Did not know about Diana. Did not know anything. Then I remembered. Goodbye, loser. Thumbs up from Dad. The pity faded. Vivian made her choice. She chose Derek. She chose cruelty. She could discover the truth on her own. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of efficient destruction. Sweet Magnolia Bakery, the 3-tier custom cake. $2,800 committed, 50% penalty, done in 4 minutes. Austin Event Company, the rentals. Tables, chairs, linens, lighting totaling $4,200. They were overbooked and actually sounded relieved. $800 penalty, partial refund on the rest. Reverend Michael Torres, the officiant. $500 deposit. He did not answer, so I left a message. Reverend Torres, this is Meredith Shaw. Please cancel the Holloway Shaw ceremony. The wedding will not be proceeding as planned. By noon, I had completed the systematic dismantling of my sister's wedding. Total committed across all vendors, $102,000. Total penalties paid or owed, approximately $36,000. Total removed from my liability, approximately $66,000. Money lost, yes, but money I would have lost anyway. And now I owed nothing more. Each call had felt like removing a stone from a backpack I had been carrying uphill my entire life. By noon, the backpack was empty. At 12:47, I finally checked the messages I had been ignoring. My phone had been buzzing continuously for hours while I focused on the vendor calls. The screen filled with notifications as I scrolled. From my father, 17 messages with escalating intensity. 7:02 in the morning, Cedar Grove just called. What have you done? 7:15, answer your phone now. 8:30, the caterer canceled. This is insane. 9:45, you are going to destroy your sister's wedding. 10:22, I am coming to your apartment. 11:05, you think you can hide? We will see about that. 11:47, you have made a serious mistake, Meredith. Serious. From my mother, 12 messages focused entirely on guilt. How could you do this to your sister? She is devastated. You are breaking my heart. Family is supposed to support each other. Your grandmother would be ashamed. That last line again. Your grandmother would be ashamed. The manipulation was so transparent now. Invoking Eleanor's name to wound me, when Eleanor was the only person who ever truly saw me. Grandma Eleanor would be ashamed, but not of me. From Vivian, 23 messages of pure rage. You psycho bitch, Derek is going to sue you. You were always jealous of me. This is why no one wants you around. You are dead to me. Dead. Fix this or I swear to God. I read every message, did not reply to a single one. The threats did not scare me. The guilt did not move me. They were just noise now. The sound of people realizing they could no longer control me. I returned to the unknown number from early morning. 2:34. I know this is strange, but I need to talk to you about Derek Holloway. Please do not ignore this. It could still be a trap. But something made me dial anyway. The phone rang 4 times before a woman answered. Her voice was hushed, like she was afraid of being overheard. Hello. This is Meredith Shaw. You texted me about Derek Holloway. Sharp intake of breath on the other end. Oh, thank God. I was not sure you would call. Who is this? My name is Jenna. I work with Derek. Or I did until last month. Her voice was tight with nerves. Look, I do not know you, but I know your sister is marrying Derek in a few weeks, and I know something she should know. About Diana? Silence. Then, how do you know about Diana? I found emails. I have evidence. Jenna exhaled heavily. Then you know more than I thought. But there is more. Diana is not just his affair. She is... Look, can we meet? This is not a phone conversation. Why are you telling me this? Why not tell Vivian directly? I tried. Your sister blocked me. She said I was a jealous ex-coworker trying to ruin her life. Everything in me said to be careful. This could be a setup. But Jenna's voice did not sound like a trap. It sounded like someone carrying a weight she desperately needed to put down. Where do you want to meet? We arranged to meet the next morning. Saturday, 9 o'clock, a coffee shop on South Congress. Neutral territory. Bring the emails if you have them, Jenna said. I have other things. The call ended and I sat in the sudden quiet of my apartment, processing. Derek was hiding something bigger than an affair. Someone was willing to risk exposure to tell me about it. And somewhere in Galveston County, records existed that might explain what happened to my grandmother's will. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Aunt Ruth. Can you come to my house this afternoon? Richard is at the office until 6. We will have time. Finally, someone in the family willing to talk. I texted back immediately. On my way. But before I could grab my keys, another message arrived from Ruth. 30 seconds after her invitation. Meredith, I am sorry I could not call today. Your father showed up at my house. We need to talk, but not now. He is watching. Be careful. I read the message 3 times. He is watching. My father had gone to Ruth's house, the same day I started canceling vendors. The same day the family's carefully constructed facade began to crack. Why? What was he trying to keep buried? This was not just a family argument about a wedding anymore. Something bigger was being protected. Something worth threatening family members over. And tomorrow, when I met with Jenna and learned what she knew about Derek, the picture would become clearer. I spent my whole life being the one who did not ask questions, the one who kept the peace, the one who made everything easier for everyone else. But now the questions were piling up, about Derek, about Grandma's will, about why my father was suddenly showing up at Ruth's door with warnings and threats, and I was done waiting for answers to come to me. Tomorrow, I would start hunting them down myself. Hideaway Coffee on South Congress was already busy when I arrived at 8:45 Saturday morning. I ordered a black coffee I did not intend to drink and took a corner table with my back to the wall and a clear view of the entrance. Old habit from years of conference rooms and client meetings. Always know who is coming through the door. Always have an exit strategy. The coffee sat untouched in front of me, steam curling up and disappearing, while I watched every face that entered. 9 o'clock came and went. 9:02, the door opened and a woman walked in. Late 20s, professional dress even on a Saturday, eyes scanning the room with the nervous energy of someone who was not sure this was a good idea. She spotted me and paused, then walked over with careful steps, like the floor might give way beneath her. "Meredith? Jenna? Sit down." She slid into the chair across from me, clutching her own coffee like a lifeline. Up close, I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her eyes kept flicking toward the door. She was scared. That much was obvious. But she was here anyway, which meant whatever she knew was important enough to risk the fear. "I worked at Derek's firm," she said without preamble. "Left last month. Encouraged to resign, which is corporate speak for fired before I could become a problem." "Why were you a problem?" "Because I was Diana's friend before she started seeing Derek. Diana told me everything. Bragged about it, actually. She said Derek was going to leave your sister eventually. That the wedding was just a formality. Just a formality." The words landed like stones. I pulled out my phone and showed Jenna the email screenshots I had saved, the messages between Derek and Diana, the intimate language, the plans. She looked at them and nodded grimly. "That is not even the worst of it." "What do you mean?" Jenna leaned closer, dropping her voice even though the coffee shop noise provided plenty of cover. "Derek is not just cheating, he is planning something." Diana let it slip once, something about the real payday happening after the wedding. "Payday?" I do not know the details. But Diana said Derek was marrying your sister for access to something. Money, I think. Family money. The words echoed in my mind as I drove toward Cedar Park that afternoon. Family money. The Shaws were not wealthy. My father's construction company had been struggling for years. Everyone knew that, even if no one talked about it openly. What family money could Derek possibly be after? Unless it was not about what the family had now. Unless it was about what they were supposed to inherit. Grandma Eleanor's estate. The beach house in Galveston, sitting on prime waterfront property. The savings account my father claimed went entirely to my mother. Everything Dad said was handled after the funeral. Everything I was told to stop asking about. Jenna had given me one more piece of information before we parted. She tried to warn Vivian directly, called her, messaged her, even showed up at her apartment once. Vivian blocked her on everything. Called her a jealous liar trying to ruin her happiness. "Your sister does not want to hear the truth," Jenna said. "But someone in that family should know. Even if they hate me for it." I did not hate her. I was grateful. She had confirmed what I suspected and given me a new direction to investigate. Derek was not just a cheater. He was a schemer. And Vivian was his target. Ruth's house sat on a quiet street in Cedar Park, 30 minutes north of Austin. A modest ranch-style home with a neat garden out front and wind chimes singing softly on the porch. Cats watched me from the window as I walked up the path. The whole place felt like it belonged to someone who had made peace with herself a long time ago. Ruth opened the door before I could knock. 54 years old, silver hair pulled back in a loose braid, wearing a soft cardigan that made her look approachable and warm. My mother's younger sister, but they could not have been more different. Where Patricia was sharp edges and rigid expectations, Ruth was soft corners and open questions. She pulled me into a hug immediately, holding on longer than polite custom required. "Oh, sweetheart, I am so sorry it took me this long." The living room was warm with afternoon light. Tea already made, cookies arranged on a plate like she had been expecting me for hours. Photographs covered every surface. Ruth with her late husband, Ruth traveling through Europe, Ruth at various ages laughing, living, being herself, and scattered among them several photos of Grandma Eleanor. One caught my eye immediately. Eleanor and Ruth standing together on the porch of the Galveston beach house, the Gulf of Mexico stretching blue and endless behind them. Ruth saw me looking. "That was her favorite place in the world," she said quietly. "She talked about you constantly, you know. My Mary. That is what she called you." My throat tightened unexpectedly. She was the only one who ever really saw me. "She saw everything, your grandmother. That is why she did what she did." "What do you mean?" Ruth's expression shifted. The warmth remained, but something serious moved beneath it. "Sit down, Meredith. There is something you need to know, something I should have told you 2 years ago." Ruth began carefully, choosing each word like she was laying stones across a river. "Your grandmother was sharp until almost the very end. The dementia came fast at the finish, but before that, she was completely herself." "I know. I visited her a month before she died. She was still her." Ruth nodded. "She updated her will 6 months before that visit. I was there when she did it. The room seemed to contract around us. Updated her will 6 months before I visited, when Eleanor was still lucid, still deliberate, still the woman who never did anything without a reason." "Eleanor had very specific wishes," Ruth continued. "The beach house in Galveston. She wanted that to go to you." My heart stopped. "To me?" "Directly to you. Along with her savings account. Around $400,000. $400,000. The number hung in the air between us, impossible and real. She said you were the only one who would appreciate it. The only one who understood what it meant to build something yourself. But after she died, Richard handled everything. He told me the will was simple, everything to Patricia, then distributed among the family. That is what he told me too. It is not true." Ruth stood and walked to a cabinet against the far wall. She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder, worn at the edges like it had been handled many times. "A week after Eleanor died, I asked Richard to see the will. He showed me a document, but it was not the one I witnessed." "What do you mean?" "The will I saw had different provisions, different beneficiaries. It left the beach house to Patricia, the savings split between her and your father. That is not what she wanted. No, it is not. So what happened to the real will?" Ruth's face darkened as she carried the folder back to where I sat. "I do not know. But I made a copy of something Eleanor gave me before she died, when she was still lucid. She said if anything happens to my wishes, give this to Meredith." Ruth handed me an envelope. Aged paper, yellowed at the edges. Grandma Eleanor's handwriting on the front, the script I knew as well as my own. For Mary, if needed. My hands trembled as I took it. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter, dated 18 months before Eleanor died. The paper was thick, cream-colored, the kind she always used for important correspondence. Her handwriting filled the page, precise and elegant and deliberate. "My dearest girl," she began, "I am writing this because I have watched our family for 70 years, and I know what they are capable of. I want you to understand my wishes clearly, in my own words, in case anyone tries to tell you differently after I am gone. The beach house is yours. I have put it in a proper will, filed with my attorney, Harold Vance, in Galveston. The savings account is yours too. I want you to have a foundation, Meredith, something solid beneath your feet, something no one can take from you unless you let them. She wrote about my father next. Your father has ambitions that outpace his abilities. Your mother has weaknesses she refuses to acknowledge. Together they may try to take what I have left you. I have seen how they treat you, how they lean on you, how they take and take and take, calling it family, calling it love, calling it what we do for each other. I see you, my girl. I have always seen you. The letter ended with words that made my chest ache so deeply I could barely breathe. You have always been the strong one, Meredith. Not because you do not feel pain, but because you keep standing after you feel it. I want you to have something that is truly yours, something no one can take unless you let them. Do not let them, my girl. Do not let them take what is yours. All my love, always. Grandma Eleanor. I read the letter 3 times. Tears I did not know I was holding finally fell, dropping onto the paper before I could stop them. Ruth sat beside me in silence, letting me grieve. This was the first time since Eleanor died that I had felt her presence so strongly, her voice in my ear, her hand on my shoulder, her love preserved in ink on paper, reaching across the years to find me when I needed it most. And with the grief came something else, rage, cold and clean and clarifying. They took this from me. My own family stole my inheritance, not just money, not just property. They stole the last gift my grandmother tried to give me. They stole her wishes. They stole her voice. Ruth, I said finally, my voice steadier than I expected. If Grandma filed a will with an attorney in Galveston, where is it? That is what I have been trying to find out. Harold Vance retired 3 years ago. His practice was absorbed by another firm. Which firm? I do not know, but I know someone who might. Ruth explained what she suspected while I sat with the letter still in my hands. Your father was the executor of Eleanor's estate. He had access to all her documents. You think he destroyed the original will? Or replaced it? I do not know how, but the will that went to probate was not the will Eleanor wrote. There was something else, Ruth continued, her voice dropping. After the funeral, I overheard your parents talking. Richard said to Patricia, "It is done. She will never know." She? Me? I think so. When I asked Patricia about it later, she pretended she did not know what I was talking about. And that is when you tried to warn me. At the funeral? Yes. But Richard got to me first, showed up at my door, told me to stay out of family business. Said if I confused you with false information, there would be consequences. What kind of consequences? He did not say, but he looked at me the way he looks at problems he intends to solve. The picture forming in my mind was ugly and complete. Dad falsified Grandma's will. Stole the beach house and savings worth over $1 million combined. Threatened Ruth into silence. And Derek marrying Vivian for access to family money. Did he know about the stolen inheritance? Was he part of it? Were they all working together? I left Ruth's house at 5:15, the letter safely tucked into my bag along with copies of everything she had given me. She walked me to my car, her hand warm on my arm. Be careful, Meredith. Richard has a lot to lose if this comes out. I know. No, I mean, he is not just protecting money. He is protecting his reputation, his business. Everything he has built runs on people trusting him. If they find out he forged his mother-in-law's will, he loses everything. I pulled out of Ruth's driveway and started down the tree-lined street toward the main road. That was when I noticed the car, a dark sedan parked 3 houses down. Tinted windows. It had not been there when I arrived. I watched in the rearview mirror as I drove. The sedan pulled out, followed, kept exactly 3 car lengths behind me for a full mile. My heart rate climbed, but I kept my speed steady, my hands relaxed on the wheel. Do not let them see you are scared. At the intersection where I would turn toward the highway, the sedan suddenly veered right and disappeared down a side street, gone as quickly as it appeared. Coincidence or warning? My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as I merged onto the highway toward Austin. They knew I went to Ruth. They might know what Ruth told me, But they did not know what was coming next. Grandma Eleanor had trusted me with her final wishes. My own father had buried them. For 2 years, I had been mourning a woman who tried to protect me even in death, while the people who stole from her walked around like nothing happened. But now I had a name. Harold Vance. A location. Galveston County Courthouse. And something I had never had before. Proof that I was not imagining things. Proof that I was owed something. Come Monday, I was going to find it. I left Austin before dawn on Monday morning. The drive to Galveston takes about 3 hours if traffic cooperates, and I wanted to be at the courthouse when it opened. Highway 71 stretched empty and dark ahead of me as I headed southeast toward the coast. Coffee steamed in the cup holder. Grandma Eleanor's letter sat in my purse on the passenger seat. I had called in sick to work for the first time in 4 years. Linda sounded surprised, but did not push. "Take care of yourself, Meredith. We will manage." I wondered what she would think if she knew what I was actually doing. Hunting for proof that my father forged my grandmother's will. Trying to reclaim an inheritance I never knew existed. The sky lightened gradually as I drove, gray giving way to pink, giving way to the pale blue of early morning. My mind raced through possibilities the entire way. What if the original will did not exist anymore? What if my father had destroyed all evidence? What if Ruth was mistaken, confused, remembering something that never happened? But Eleanor's letter was real. Her words were real. Her handwriting, her voice, her love preserved on paper. That had to mean something. The outskirts of Houston swallowed me in traffic around 7:30. Cars pressed close on all sides, everyone rushing somewhere important, everyone locked in their own private worlds. I kept my eyes forward and my hands steady. This was not the time for distraction. The traffic thinned as I approached the coast, the landscape flattening into salt marshes and coastal prairie. I had not been to Galveston since the funeral, could not bear to see the beach house knowing it belonged to someone else now, knowing I would never again sit on that porch watching the waves roll in while Grandma Eleanor hummed beside me. But what if it was always supposed to be mine? What if I had been mourning a theft instead of a loss? The Galveston Causeway stretched across the bay like a ribbon connecting the mainland to the island. I crossed it with the windows down, salt air filling the car, memories rising unbidden. Summer trips as a child, ice cream on the strand, sand castles that the tide always claimed. Grandma's voice telling me stories about the hurricane of 1900, about the seawall they built to protect the city, about resilience and rebuilding and refusing to let the water win. She taught me so much on this island. Now I was coming back to find out what she tried to leave me. The Galveston County Courthouse sat in the heart of downtown, a historic limestone building with the Texas flag snapping in the Gulf breeze out front. I parked on a side street at 9:45 and sat in the car for a moment, gathering myself. This was real now. Whatever I found in there would change everything. I could still turn around. Could still go back to Austin, go back to work, go back to being the responsible daughter who never asked uncomfortable questions. But that Meredith had died the moment she saw that text message. "You are not invited to the wedding. Goodbye, loser. Thumbs up from Dad." I got out of the car and walked toward the entrance. Security check, information desk, directions to probate records. The hallway smelled like old paper and floor polish, the particular scent of bureaucracy that is somehow the same in every government building. I found the records office at the end of a long corridor. Small room, fluorescent lights humming overhead, filing cabinets stretching from floor to ceiling. An older woman sat behind the counter, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, a nameplate that said Dolores. "Help you, hon." I approached the counter with my heart pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. "I am looking for probate records for Eleanor Margaret Shaw. Died 2.5 years ago." Dolores turned to her computer and typed slowly, squinting at the screen through her glasses. Shaw, here we go. Eleanor Margaret Shaw, deceased. Estate probated through this office. Can I see the filed documents? Public record. Give me a minute." She disappeared into the back, past rows of shelves that seemed to stretch into infinity. 10 minutes passed. 15. My leg bounced under the counter, palms sweating despite the air conditioning. Finally, Dolores returned with a manila folder in her hands. Here is what we got: will, death certificate, executor appointment, property transfer documents. She slid the folder across the counter toward me. I opened it with trembling hands. The first document was the will. Standard legal format. Typed, dated 8 months before Eleanor's death. I scanned to the beneficiary section. To my daughter, Patricia Ann Shaw. I leave the entirety of my estate, including all real property, financial accounts, and personal effects. Executor, Richard Shaw. Everything to Patricia. Nothing to me. Not a single mention of Meredith anywhere in the document. This was the will my father showed Ruth. The wrong will. I studied the document more carefully, looking for anything that felt off. The language was generic, boilerplate, the kind of impersonal legal text that could apply to anyone. Eleanor was specific about everything she did. This did not sound like her at all. And the date. 8 months before she died. But Ruth said Eleanor updated her will 6 months before her death, 2 months after this document was supposedly signed. I looked up at Dolores. Is this the only will on file? She frowned and checked the folder again. Should be. Wait. She peered at something stapled to the back of the documents. There is a note here. Says a previous will was filed and then superseded. Superseded? What does that mean? Means a newer will replaced an older one. The newer one is what went to probate. Can I see the older one? If it is in the system, sure, let me check. More typing, more squinting at the screen. Well, that is odd. The original filing is referenced, but the document itself is marked withdrawn by executor. Withdrawn? Your executor, Richard Shaw, submitted paperwork to withdraw the first will and replace it with the current one, standard procedure if there is a more recent testament. But what if there was not? Dolores looked at me over her glasses, something shifting in her expression. Han, that is a question for a lawyer, not a clerk, but I can tell you this. Withdrawals require supporting documentation, signature verification, notarization. Do you have copies of that documentation? She hesitated, glancing toward the back room. I should not. Please. This is my grandmother. I think something wrong happened. A long pause. Dolores sighed heavily, then stood. Wait here. She returned 10 minutes later with a second folder, thinner and older than the first. This is the original filing. It was in the archived records. Should have been destroyed after the supersession, but we are backed up. She handed it to me with a look that said she was breaking rules and knew it. You did not get this from me. I opened the folder, different format immediately, handwritten portions mixed with typed text. Eleanor's voice in every line, specific and deliberate and unmistakably her. The date was 4 months before the official will. This was what Ruth witnessed. I read the provisions with my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. To my granddaughter, Meredith Ann Shaw, I leave my beach house property at 1847 Seawall Boulevard, Galveston, Texas, along with all contents therein. To my granddaughter, Meredith Ann Shaw, I leave the entirety of my savings account held at Gulf Coast Credit Union, current balance approximately $412,000. To my daughter, Patricia Ann Shaw, I leave my jewelry collection and personal photographs. To my daughter, Ruth Ellen Porter, I leave my book collection and the grandfather clock from my living room. The beach house, the savings, everything Eleanor promised in her letter, all of it was supposed to come to me. I read the words 3 times, making sure I was not imagining them. $412,000 in savings. Beach house worth what? $800,000? $900,000 in today's market? Over $1 million. Stolen. I flipped to the signature page with shaking hands. Eleanor's signature sat at the bottom, the real one, familiar from decades of birthday cards and Christmas letters and notes she left on my pillow when I stayed at the beach house. Below her signature were 2 witness lines. Ruth Ellen Porter. Harold Vance, attorney at law. This will was witnessed. It was filed. It was real. And then my father made it disappear. I laid both wills side by side on the counter. Dolores watched with curiosity she was trying to hide. The signatures were different. Not just slightly different. Completely different. The original will showed Eleanor's flowing script, confident and elegant, the E with its distinctive loop that I would recognize anywhere. The official will showed a signature that was shaky, smaller, with a different slant entirely. But here was the thing that made my stomach turn. The official will was dated 8 months before Eleanor died. She was still healthy then, still sharp, still herself. Why would her signature be shakier on an earlier document than a later one? It did not make sense, unless the earlier document was not signed earlier at all, unless someone copied her signature badly, unless someone forged it. You know, Dolores said quietly, leaning closer to study the papers. I am no expert, but those do not look like the same hand to me. They are not. The second one, the official one, looks like someone was copying. See how the letters hesitate? Real signatures flow. This one stutters. I photographed both documents with my phone, capturing every detail. Can I get copies of these? I can give you copies of the public record, the filed will, the withdrawn one. Dolores hesitated, looking at me for a long moment. Then she pulled out the copier. My mother's will got contested by her second husband. Took everything. I know what it feels like. She made copies of both documents and handed them over. You did not get these from me, thank you. I mean it, thank you. I sat on a bench outside the courthouse at 12:30, spreading the copies across my lap. The evidence was clear. 2 wills with different provisions. Suspicious signatures. A withdrawal filed by my father that bypassed the original attorney entirely. But I needed more. I needed the attorney who witnessed the original will. Harold Vance. If he was still alive, if he remembered, if he would talk to me. I searched for him on my phone. Harold Vance, attorney Galveston. Multiple results appeared. He had been well known, practiced estate law for 40 years on the island, retired 3 years ago. His practice was absorbed by Meridian Legal Group. I called the number. Meridian Legal, how may I direct your call? I am trying to reach someone who handled a will for my grandmother. The original attorney was Harold Vance. A pause. Mr. Vance is retired, but his files were transferred to our office. Who was the client? Eleanor Margaret Shaw. Typing sounds through the phone. I see her in our system. The file is marked inactive, but I can have one of our associates review it. Can you come in, today? We have an opening at 3 o'clock. I will be there. Meridian Legal Group occupied a modern office building near the Strand District. I signed in at the lobby at 2:45 and waited in a reception area with leather chairs and framed photographs of the Galveston coastline. One photo showed the historic seawall stretching into the distance. Grandma's house was on that seawall, or had been, before my father sold it. A woman appeared in the doorway, late 40s, sharp eyes, firm handshake. Ms. Shaw? I am Carla Reyes. I have been reviewing your grandmother's file. Thank you for seeing me on short notice. When I saw what was in that file, I made time. She led me to a conference room and closed the door behind us. Harold Vance kept meticulous records, she explained, spreading documents across the table. Original will filed March of the year Eleanor died. Provisions exactly as you described. Beach house and savings to you. Personal items to your mother and aunt. Then, 2 months later, a new will was filed, superseding the original. The superseding will was submitted by the executor. Your father. Here is where it gets interesting. Carla pulled out another document. The original will included a no contest clause, meaning if anyone challenged it, they would be disinherited. But the second will has no such clause. Exactly. And the original was filed through Harold Vance's office. The superseding will was filed directly with the probate court. No attorney of record. What does that mean? It means your father bypassed proper legal channels. He filed a will that contradicted a legally witnessed document without any legal oversight. Ms. Shaw, I have been practicing estate law for 20 years. This looks like fraud. The word landed like a gavel. Fraud. Can I contest it? You can. The statute of limitations for will contests in Texas is 2 years from probate. But there is an exception for fraud. If you can prove the second will was forged or filed under false pretenses, the timeline resets. How do I prove that? You would need a forensic handwriting analysis of the signatures, and ideally, testimony from someone who witnessed the original will, Aunt Ruth and Harold Vance. Is he still alive? He is, living in a retirement community in Clear Lake. I have his contact information. I drove home as the sun set over the gulf behind me, copies of everything spread across the passenger seat. The original will, the filing records, Carla Reyes's preliminary assessment, Harold Vance's phone number. I had a case now, not just suspicion, not just a letter from my grandmother. Actual legal grounds to contest what my father had done. Over $1 million. Stolen. By my own father. For 2 years I had believed I was forgotten. That Grandma Eleanor, like everyone else, had overlooked me in favor of the family members who demanded more attention. But Eleanor did not forget. Eleanor tried to protect me, and my father destroyed that protection. One question kept nagging at me as I merged onto the highway toward Houston. Why now? Why did Dad forge the will after Eleanor died? The original will was filed first. That was public record. Someone should have noticed. Someone should have contested. Unless no one in the family knew about the original except Dad and Ruth. And Dad threatened Ruth into silence. And I was never supposed to find out. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You were at the Galveston courthouse today. You should stop digging. No signature, no identification, just a threat. Someone was watching me. Someone knew exactly what I was doing. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back one word, no, started the engine, and headed home. They thought they could bury my grandmother's wishes along with her body. They thought they could steal from me and I would never know. But now I had the evidence. I had the lawyers. And I had something else. A threat that proved they were scared. People only threaten you when they have something to lose. And my father had everything to lose. Everything he stole. Everything he built on my grandmother's grave. I was going to take it all back. Tuesday morning arrived with gray skies and a restlessness I could not shake. I had barely slept after the drive back from Galveston, my mind turning over everything I had discovered. The original will, the forgery, the anonymous threat. But there was another thread I had been avoiding. Derek. The prenup file sitting in my wedding folder, unopened. The emails to Diana that I had only skimmed, Jenna's words echoing in my memory. The real payday happens after the wedding. What did Derek know? How was he connected to all of this? I made coffee and spread everything across my kitchen table. Copies of both wills. Grandma Eleanor's letter, screenshots of Derek's emails to Diana, and the mysterious prenup file. I had been putting this off. Something about it felt like a door I could not close once I opened it. But after yesterday, after learning the depth of my father's betrayal, I was done avoiding uncomfortable truths. I opened my laptop, navigated to the wedding folder, and double-clicked on the file. Derek Prenup Draft Version 2. The document loaded slowly, like it was hesitating too. And then I saw it, and everything shifted. It was not a standard prenuptial agreement. The language was dense with legal terminology, but I had spent 8 years analyzing financial documents. I knew how to read between the lines. The terms were heavily one-sided in Vivian's favor, which surprised me at first. Derek was supposedly the one with money, with the stable career, with the wealthy family connections. Why would he agree to terms that protected Vivian's assets more than his own? Then I reached Section 7, Paragraph 3. Inheritance and family assets. The clause read, "In the event that either party receives an inheritance during the marriage, said inheritance shall be considered joint marital property, to be divided equally in the event of dissolution. Joint marital property. Anything Vivian inherited would become half Derek's automatically. But Vivian was not supposed to inherit anything significant. Her credit was destroyed. She had no savings, no investments, no property, unless there was something else, unless Derek knew about money that I did not know about. The connection crystallized in my mind. The beach house, the $400,000 in savings. In the forged will, everything went to my mother, Patricia. Patricia was in her late 50s. Someday she would pass it on to her daughters. And when Vivian inherited her share, Derek would get half. Automatically, without question, without having to do anything except stay married long enough. But there was something else that bothered me. The prenup was dated 6 months ago, right when Derek proposed. That was before the wedding planning started, before I signed any contracts, before anyone asked me for money. Derek knew about the inheritance before any of this began. He knew what he was marrying into. The question burning in my chest was whether Derek knew about the forgery. Did he know that I was supposed to inherit everything, not Patricia? Did he know that my father had stolen from me? Was Derek in on it with my father? Or was he simply a vulture circling what he thought was Vivian's future wealth? Either way, the picture was becoming clearer. Derek was not just a cheater. He was a schemer. And Vivian, cruel as she had been to me, was his target, his mark, his meal ticket. I went back to the email evidence I had been avoiding. The forwarded thread between Derek and Diana, buried in the wedding folder where Vivian must have accidentally saved it. I had only skimmed it before, too focused on the basic fact of the affair to dig deeper into the details. Now I read every word, every timestamp, every implication. The timeline of betrayal laid itself out before me. First email, 8 months ago. Casual, flirty, testing the waters. Second email, 7 months ago. They had met for coffee. Third email, 6 months ago. Last night was incredible. I cannot stop thinking about you. 6 months ago. The same month Derek proposed to Vivian. He was sleeping with Diana while shopping for engagement rings. One email stood out from the rest, sent 4 months ago. Derek to Diana. Do not worry, babe. This wedding is just business. Once I am in, I will have access to everything. Give it 2 years, 3 max, and we will be set. Just business. Access to everything. He was not even hiding his intentions from Diana. The wedding was a transaction. Vivian was a means to an end. Diana's response made my stomach turn. I trust you. Just do not fall for her. Derek's reply was worse. Never. She is not my type. Too needy. Too desperate for approval. Too desperate for approval. That was Vivian exactly. The wound our parents had carved into her since childhood. The constant need to be seen, to be chosen, to be loved. Derek saw that vulnerability and weaponized it. Jenna arrived at the coffee shop at 2:15, looking more nervous than she had on Saturday. She kept glancing toward the door, checking her phone, fidgeting with her cup. You look different, she said when she saw me, more certain. I am. I pulled out my phone and showed her the prenup clause. She read it with widening eyes. Holy shit. He has been planning this the whole time. What do you know about Diana? Really know? Jenna hesitated, looking around the nearly empty shop. Then she leaned closer and started talking fast, like she needed to get it all out before she lost her nerve. Diana is not just some random co-worker. She and Derek have history. They dated in college, broke up because neither of them had money. Reconnected about a year ago when Diana got a job at Derek's firm. Within a month they were back together. While Derek was already seeing Vivian, he started dating your sister after reconnecting with Diana. It was calculated from the beginning. The scheme laid bare. Derek and Diana planned this together. Find a wealthy family, someone vulnerable, someone desperate for love. Date the daughter, marry in. Wait for the inheritance, then either divorce and take half, or stay married and control everything. What happens after he gets access? I asked. Jenna shook her head. I do not know. Diana never said specifically, but she talked about getting out, Like Austin was temporary, like they had somewhere else planned. There was one more thing, Jenna added, her voice dropping even lower. After I quit, Diana sent me a message. She said if I ever talked about her and Derek, she would make sure I regretted it. She threatened you? She did not say how, but I believed her. Diana was not just the other woman, she was the brains behind this operation, and she was dangerous. I drove home with my mind racing through connections. The photographer's words from Friday kept surfacing. Derek booked a private room at the venue for the night before the wedding, paid cash, said it was a surprise for Vivian. The truth was obvious now. The room was not for Vivian. It was for Diana. Derek was planning to spend his last night as a single man with his real girlfriend, in the venue I had paid for, the night before marrying my sister. For a moment, I let myself imagine Vivian. Not the Vivian who called me a loser and kicked me out of her wedding. The Vivian who was once a little girl following me around the house, wanting to do everything I did, calling me Mary Berry in her tiny voice. The Vivian who learned from our parents that love was conditional, that she had to perform to be valued, that she had to be special or she was nothing. She found a man who seemed to adore her. Finally, someone choosing her, not knowing he never chose her at all. She was just the easiest path to someone else's money. Should I tell her? Did she deserve to know? Or did she deserve to find out the hard way, the same way she let me find out I was not wanted? I decided not yet. Not because I wanted Vivian to suffer, but because timing mattered. And when this truth came out, I wanted it to come out at exactly the right moment. Maximum impact, maximum exposure, maximum karma. The question I could not shake was how Derek knew about the inheritance in the first place. The original will was filed briefly before being superseded. The only people who knew about it were Eleanor, Harold Vance, Ruth, and my father. Dad would not tell Derek about family finances. Would he? I opened LinkedIn on my laptop and searched for Derek Holloway. His profile showed the standard finance background. MBA from Texas A&M, previous employer Wellington Capital Management. Current employer Trident Investment Group. I searched for Trident Investment Group and clicked on their website, navigated to the Our Team page, scrolled through partners, associates, advisors, and froze. Under Strategic Advisors, third name down, Richard Shaw, Shaw Construction. My father was on Derek's company's board. They did not just know each other. They worked together. The implications cascaded through my mind. Dad and Derek had a professional relationship. How long? Since before Derek met Vivian? Did Dad introduce them? Did Dad choose Derek for Vivian specifically, knowing exactly what kind of man he was? I remembered something suddenly. Last Thanksgiving. Derek's first holiday with the family. Dad and Derek spent 2 hours in the study with the door closed while the rest of us made small talk in the living room. Business talk, Dad said when I asked. Nothing interesting. What were they really discussing? The will, the inheritance, the plan? That evening, I created a new folder on my laptop. Evidence. I organized everything methodically, the way I would organize any complex financial case. Category 1, will fraud. Original will copy, forged will copy. Signature comparison photos, Grandma Eleanor's letter, Carla Reyes's assessment, Harold Vance contact information. Category 2, Derek's scheme, prenup draft with inheritance clause. Email thread with Diana, screenshots of affair evidence, Amanda Chen's statement about the private room booking, Jenna's testimony, LinkedIn connection showing Dad on Derek's company board. Category 3, family financial abuse. My spreadsheet showing $127,450 in unpaid family loans, wedding contracts totaling $102,000 in my name. The text message that started everything. You are not invited to the wedding. Goodbye, loser. And my father's thumbs up. The pattern was undeniable now. They had been using me my entire life. And now they were using Vivian too. They just did not realize it. The only difference between us was that I had woken up. Vivian was still asleep, still believing Derek loved her, still believing our parents had her best interests at heart. My phone buzzed late that evening, a text from Ruth. Harold Vance called me back. He remembers everything. He wants to help. Finally. The attorney who witnessed the original will, the man who could confirm what Carla Reyes suspected, the missing piece that could turn suspicion into proof. I stared at the message, thinking about everything I now held. Evidence of Derek's affair, evidence of the will forgery, evidence that my father and Derek were professionally connected, evidence of a scheme that spanned years and involved multiple people, and now a witness willing to testify. The wedding was in 11 days, still happening somehow despite the chaos. Vivian scrambling to find new vendors, probably funded by desperate checks from my father. They thought they could salvage this. They thought they could pull everything back together, maintain the facade, proceed as if nothing had changed. What if I let them? What if I waited until the ceremony itself to reveal everything? Maximum exposure, maximum witnesses, maximum humiliation. The thought was tempting, dangerously tempting. But I was not ready to decide yet. There were still pieces missing, still questions unanswered. I needed to meet Harold Vance. I needed to understand the full scope of what my father had done. And then I would decide how much they deserved to lose. I had the affair. I had the forgery. I had the prenup that proved Derek was a predator, and now I had a witness who could blow open everything my father tried to bury. The question was not whether to use this evidence anymore. The question was when, and how publicly. My grandmother trusted me to protect what was mine. My family trusted that I would stay silent forever. Only one of them was right. And in 11 days, at my sister's wedding, everyone was going to find out which one. Wednesday morning I woke with the clearest sense of purpose I had felt in years. Today I would meet Harold Vance, the attorney who witnessed my grandmother's original will, the man who could confirm everything Ruth had told me and Carla Reyes had suspected, the missing piece that could turn circumstantial evidence into an airtight legal case. I showered, dressed in something professional but understated, and made coffee while reviewing my preparation notes. Questions I needed to ask, documents I needed to show him, points I needed to confirm. But something else had been nagging at me since yesterday. The connection between my father and Derek felt bigger than a simple introduction. Dad had been struggling with Shaw construction for years. Everyone in the family knew that, even if no one talked about it openly. But how bad was it really? After Harold Vance, I decided, I would dig into the company's public records, court filings, liens, whatever information was available to anyone willing to look. Something told me the answers were buried there. Bayshore Pines Retirement Community sat on a quiet stretch of waterfront south of Houston. Manicured lawns rolled down to the bay, and golf carts hummed along winding paths between Spanish tile roofs. This was where people came when they had done well enough in life to afford comfort in their final years. Harold Vance had requested a cottage near the water, according to the receptionist who directed me to his door. He liked watching the boats, she said. Reminded him of Galveston. I knocked at 10:55, and the door opened almost immediately, like he had been waiting. 81 years old, white hair neatly combed, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His handshake was firm, his posture straight. Whatever age had taken from him, it had not touched his mind. "You must be Eleanor's Mary," he said with a warm smile. "She talked about you constantly." The words hit harder than I expected. Another person confirming what I had desperately needed to believe, that my grandmother loved me, that she saw me, that I had not imagined the connection we shared. Harold led me into a living room filled with afternoon light. Bookshelves lined the walls, packed with legal texts and history volumes and novels with cracked spines. Photographs covered every surface. Family, colleagues, moments from a long and apparently well-lived life. Tea was already prepared, a service for two set out on the coffee table like he had known exactly when I would arrive. "Ruth told me what has happened," he said as we sat down. I am sorry it took this long for you to learn the truth." He paused, studying my face with the careful attention of someone accustomed to reading people. "I tried to contact you after Eleanor passed." "You did?" "I sent a letter to your parents' address, addressed to you specifically. It explained the provisions Eleanor made. I never received any letter." Harold's expression darkened, confirming what I already suspected. "I thought as much. When I did not hear back, I called the house. Your father answered. He said you were not interested in dredging up the past. My father, intercepting my mail, lying to the attorney who was trying to help me. Of course he did." Harold confirmed everything Ruth had told me and more. Eleanor came to him 14 months before she died, lucid and determined and absolutely specific about what she wanted. She said her family had a way of taking from those who could not defend themselves, Harold explained. She wanted to make sure you could defend yourself. "The original will left the beach house and savings to me, personal items distributed between my mother and Ruth." But there was something else, something Ruth had not mentioned. "She was very clear that your father should not be executor," Harold said. "She named me instead." I stared at him. "You were supposed to be executor?" "Yes. But somehow when the will went to probate, Richard Shaw was listed. I was removed entirely. How is that possible?" "It is not. Not legally, unless someone filed a different document. A document I never prepared." The forged will had not just changed the beneficiaries. It had changed everything, removed the attorney who would have protected Eleanor's wishes, installed the man who wanted to steal them. Harold stood and walked to a cabinet against the wall. He pulled out a folder, thick with documents, and carried it back to where I sat. "I kept copies of everything," he said. "Force of habit from 50 years of practice." Inside the folder I found the original will, signed and witnessed, Harold's notes from his meeting with Eleanor, and something that made my blood run cold. A copy of a letter addressed to me stamped with a return notice. Refused. My father had not just failed to deliver Harold's letter, he had actively refused it, sent it back, made sure I would never see it. I showed Harold the forged will I had obtained from the courthouse. He studied it carefully, comparing it to his original, his frown deepening with each passing moment. "This is not Eleanor's signature," he said finally. "The proportions are wrong, the pressure is inconsistent. She had a very distinctive way of signing her name. This is not it. Would you testify to that in court?" In a heartbeat. Eleanor trusted me to protect her wishes. I failed her once by not fighting harder after she died. I will not fail her again. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like hope. This was not just anger anymore. This was not just suspicion or circumstantial evidence. This was a legal case I could actually win. I left Harold's cottage at 12:30 with copies of everything he had, and the first genuine optimism I had felt in days. But the questions were still multiplying. Why had my father needed the money so badly? The beach house alone was worth over $800,000. The savings added another $400,000. That was over $1 million he had stolen from me. What could possibly require that kind of desperate theft? I drove to Austin and went directly to the Travis County Records Office. Shaw Construction was a registered Texas LLC. Public filings, liens, court cases, all available to anyone willing to look. I had never thought to look before. Why would I? Dad's company was just part of the background of my life, something he talked about at holidays, something that explained why money was always tight and why Mary always needed to help out. I started searching, and what I found made everything suddenly horribly clear. 3 active lawsuits against Shaw Construction appeared in the records. The first was from a subcontractor claiming $340,000 in unpaid invoices. The second was from a materials supplier claiming $215,000 in defaults. The third was from a former employee claiming wrongful termination plus back wages. Total exposure from lawsuits alone exceeded $600,000. But that was not the worst of it. 2 liens had been filed against the company's assets. An IRS lien for $287,000 in unpaid payroll taxes. A state lien for $94,000 in unpaid workers' compensation premiums. The company was not just struggling, it was drowning. I sat at the records office computer, staring at the numbers, watching the timeline click into place. Eleanor died 2.5 years ago. The first lawsuit was filed 2 years ago. The lien started 18 months ago. Dad did not steal my inheritance on impulse or out of simple greed. He stole it because his company was already failing. Eleanor's money was supposed to save Shaw Construction, except it did not. The bleeding continued. The lawsuits piled up. The liens accumulated, and now the company was worse off than ever. But what happened to the beach house? In the forged will, it went to my mother, Patricia. Did they sell it? Keep it? Mortgage it? I searched property records for 1847 Seawall Boulevard, Galveston, Texas. The result made my stomach drop. The beach house had been transferred to Patricia Shaw 14 months ago, shortly after the forged will went through probate. 8 months later, 6 months ago, it was sold. Sale price, $875,000. Buyer, a real estate investment company, gone. Grandma Eleanor's beach house was gone forever, the place where I spent my happiest summers, the porch where she taught me to read contracts, the kitchen where we made breakfast together. Sold to strangers. For money that went where? I could not access bank records without a subpoena, but I could see the timing. Beach house sold 6 months ago. Derek proposed to Vivian 6 months ago. Wedding planning started 6 months ago. Over $100,000 in wedding contracts signed by me over the last 6 months. The pattern was undeniable. Dad sold the stolen beach house. Used part of the money to stay afloat. But there was not enough, so they needed more. Enter Derek. Enter the wedding. Enter Mary's credit and Mary's savings, and Mary's endless, reliable, exploitable responsibility. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the records office, processing everything. Shaw Construction was failing. Had been failing for years. My father's reputation, his legacy, his entire identity was tied to that company. He built it from nothing over 3 decades. It was supposed to be his monument. Instead, it was his grave. Desperate people do desperate things. Dad did not wake up one day deciding to become a villain. He made one bad choice, then another, then another. Stole from Eleanor because he was drowning. Sold the beach house because the stealing was not enough. Manipulated his daughters because he had no other options left. Each step a little worse than the last. Each step harder to undo. I remembered a conversation from 2 years ago, right after Grandma's funeral. Dad pulled me aside at the reception, his voice unusually soft. "Things are tight right now, sweetheart, but they will turn around. They always do." I thought he was talking about grief. He was talking about money. He was already planning how to use Eleanor's death to save himself. Understanding his motivation did not make it acceptable. Having reasons did not excuse what he did. Dad had choices. He chose theft. Mom had choices. She chose silence. Vivian had choices. She chose cruelty. And now I had choices too. That evening I updated my evidence folder with everything I had learned. Harold Vance testimony secured. Company financials exposed. Beach house sale documented. The conspiracy map was complete now. I could trace every step. Eleanor dies, leaving everything to me. Dad forges a new will, making Patricia the beneficiary. Dad becomes executor illegally, removing Harold Vance. Beach house transferred to Patricia, then sold for $875,000. Money used to prop up failing company temporarily. When that runs out, they need more. Derek appears, connected to Dad through Trident Investment Group's advisory board. Derek targets Vivian, drafts a prenup ensuring inheritance access. Wedding planned, Mary manipulated into paying for everything. End goal, drain Mary completely, funnel every dollar into the family's bottomless financial pit. I was not just overlooked or taken for granted. I was targeted. My reliability, my responsibility, my love for my family, all of it weaponized against me. My phone buzzed just before 9. A call from a number I had not expected to see again. My father. I let it go to voicemail. His message came through a minute later, his voice controlled but edged with something I had never heard before. Desperation. Meredith. We need to talk. This has gone far enough. Come to dinner Sunday. Let us work this out like family. Like family. The audacity of those words after everything he had done. A text followed immediately from a different number. Unknown, like before. You visited Harold Vance today. Last warning. Drop this or face consequences. They were tracking my movements now. Someone knew exactly where I had been, who I had talked to, what I was doing. Was it Dad himself? Someone he hired? Derek? It did not matter. The threats only proved what I already knew. They were scared, and scared people make mistakes. I texted Ruth. Sunday dinner at my parents' house. They invited me. Her response came back within a minute. Are you going? I typed my reply carefully, feeling the weight of the decision settle into my bones. Yes, but not for the reason they think. They wanted a family dinner? Fine, they would get one. But this time I would not be sitting at the table they set for me. I would be setting the table myself. And when I was done, they would finally understand what it felt like to have the ground disappear beneath them. The same way they had pulled it out from under me my entire life. 10 days until the wedding, 7 days until Sunday dinner, and a lifetime of debts about to come due. Sunday afternoon arrived with the kind of heavy stillness that precedes a storm. I drove toward Westlake Hills with the windows down, letting the October air clear my head. The route was familiar, burned into my memory from 18 years of living in that house before I finally escaped to my own apartment. Tree-lined streets gave way to larger lots, manicured lawns, houses that proclaimed success and stability to anyone passing by. My parents' home sat at the end of a cul-de-sac. 5 bedrooms, 3-car garage, limestone facade that my father had designed himself when Shaw Construction was still thriving. A monument to ambition. A facade hiding rot. I had not been here since Christmas, and even then I had only stayed long enough to deliver gifts and endure the annual performance of family togetherness. Today would be different. Today I was walking into their territory with weapons they did not know I possessed. My bag sat on the passenger seat, heavy with documents. Copies of both wills, signature comparisons, Grandma Eleanor's letter, evidence I had selected carefully, strategically. Not everything I had gathered, just enough to shift the balance of power, just enough to let them know I was no longer the daughter they could dismiss. I turned onto their street and immediately noticed something wrong. 2 extra cars in the driveway beyond my parents' vehicles. One I recognized instantly. Derek's black BMW, polished to a mirror shine, parked like he owned the place. My father's invitation had not mentioned anyone else attending. This was not a family dinner. It was an ambush. I pulled to the curb 3 houses down instead of parking in the driveway. Easier exit if things went sideways. I sat for a moment, recalibrating my approach. Derek's presence changed the dynamic. He was not supposed to be here, which meant my father wanted reinforcements, which meant they were more worried than I had realized. Good. Worried people make mistakes. I grabbed my bag, checked that the folder was secure inside, and walked toward the house I grew up in. The house where I learned that love was conditional. The house where I discovered that being responsible meant being invisible. The house I was about to burn down, metaphorically speaking. My mother opened the front door before I could ring the bell. Her smile was too bright, her eyes too watchful. "Meredith, you came? We are so glad." The performance had begun. I stepped inside and the familiar smell hit me. Roast chicken, garlic, rosemary. Mom's everything is fine recipe, the one she made whenever the family needed to pretend we were normal. The foyer stretched ahead of me, opening into the living room where I could see figures waiting. But before I could move forward, my father appeared from the hallway to my right. Richard Shaw, 61 years old, silver hair combed back, wearing the kind of casual weekend clothes that still somehow looked like a business uniform. His expression was controlled, but something flickered behind his eyes when he saw me. Fear? Calculation? Both? "Meredith, I am surprised you came. Why? It is a family celebration, is it not? After everything that has happened." "After everything you did, you mean?" His jaw tightened. "This is not the time or place." "You are right. The living room is the time and place." "Excuse me." I walked past him before he could respond, feeling his gaze burn into my back as I entered the main room. The living room had been arranged like a courtroom. My father's leather armchair sat at the head of the space, the throne position he always claimed. My mother hovered near the kitchen doorway, already retreating into hostess mode. Vivian perched on the edge of the couch, arms crossed tight against her chest, refusing to look at me. And beside her, Derek, one leg bouncing with barely contained energy, his smile so fake it looked painted on. No Aunt Ruth, of course not. They would never invite the one family member who might take my side. Everyone stood when I entered. The formality felt strange, almost ceremonial. My father's voice came from behind me as he followed me into the room. "Thanks for coming, sweetheart. Sit down." The only available seat was a small armchair positioned to face everyone else, surrounded, outnumbered, exactly where they wanted me. I remained standing. I will stand for now. Something shifted in my father's expression. The first crack in his composure, the first sign that this conversation would not go the way he planned. The silence stretched for several uncomfortable seconds before my father broke it. "We need to talk about what has been happening. The vendor cancellations. The disruption you have caused." Disruption. I noted his word choice, like I was a weather event rather than a person responding to betrayal. "You have put this family in a very difficult position, Meredith." "I have put the family in a difficult position?" My mother stepped forward, her voice pitched to that particular frequency of maternal guilt she had perfected over decades. "The wedding is in 6 days. 6 days. Do you understand what you have done?" "I understand that I canceled contracts that were in my name. Contracts I signed. Contracts I paid for. Contracts I was never going to be reimbursed for. That is not—" You would have what? Paid me back? Like the $40,000 I loaned for Vivian's apartment deposit? Like the $15,000 for Shaw Construction's payroll emergency? Like the $11,000 for the credit card debt, the $6,000 for the medical bills, the $14,000 for Vivian's car payments? The numbers fell from my mouth like stones. Specific. Documented. Undeniable. The room went quiet. They had not expected me to have receipts. Vivian stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. "This is such bullshit. You are just jealous. You have always been jealous of me." "Jealous of what exactly? Of me, of my wedding, of the fact that someone actually wants to marry me and—" "Vivian!" Derek's voice cut in, sharp with warning. But Vivian kept going, her voice rising. "You could not stand that I was finally getting something you could not have, so you had to ruin it. Just like you always ruin everything." "Vivian, that is enough," my father's command voice, the one that used to make me shrink. But Vivian was past the point of control. "No, she needs to hear this. Mom and Dad have given her everything. They paid for her college. They supported her career. Actually," I kept my voice quiet, level, the contrast to her hysteria deliberate. "They redirected my college fund to pay for your private school tuition. I paid for my own education, with loans, that I am still paying off." Vivian's mouth opened. Closed. She looked at our mother. Mom's eyes dropped to the floor. She did not deny it. Could not deny it because it was true, documented in financial records I had pulled years ago when I was trying to understand why my student loan burden was so crushing. I let the silence do its work for a moment. Then I continued. "This is how it has always worked, is it not? Mary is the responsible one. Mary can handle it. Mary does not need the same attention or support or consideration. Mary is just there to clean up everyone else's messes. Now wait just a minute. My father started. I am not finished. The words came out harder than I intended, but I did not soften them. My father stopped mid-sentence, shock registering on his face. In 34 years, I had never spoken to him like that. The room seemed to hold its breath. I opened my bag and pulled out the folder I had prepared. Set it on the coffee table in front of me with a deliberate thud. Before we continue, there is something you should see. My father's eyes locked onto the folder. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition? Fear? Both? What is that? My mother's voice had gone thin. The truth. I pulled out the first document. The original will. This is Grandma Eleanor's will. The real one, signed, witnessed, and filed with the probate court in Galveston County. I handed it to my mother. Her hands trembled as she took it. Read the provisions. My mother's voice shook as she read aloud. To my granddaughter, Meredith Ann Shaw, I leave my beach house property at 1847 Seawall Boulevard, Galveston, Texas, along with all contents therein. She stopped, looked up at me, then at my father. Her face had gone pale. Richard, what is this? My father's complexion had shifted from controlled calm to something approaching gray. That document is outdated. Eleanor changed her mind before she died. Did she? I pulled out the second document, the forged will. Then explain why this will, the one you filed with the court, is dated before the original, and why Grandma's signature looks nothing like her actual handwriting. I laid both documents side by side on the coffee table. Look at them, really look. The silence stretched. Derek shifted on the couch, his leg bouncing faster. Vivian stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language she could not read. My mother's hands trembled as she leaned forward to compare the signatures. Her breath caught. You forged Grandma's will, Dad. You stole my inheritance. That is a serious accusation. It is not an accusation. It is a fact. I have Harold Vance's testimony. He was supposed to be executor. You removed him illegally and installed yourself. He has copies of the original documents. He remembers exactly what Grandma wanted. He is prepared to testify. My father's composure cracked visibly now, panic leaking through. Harold Vance is an old man with a failing memory. His memory is fine. He remembers the letter he sent me after Grandma died. The one you intercepted. The one you marked refused and sent back without ever showing it to me. My mother stood up suddenly. Richard. You said Eleanor left everything to me. You said it was simple, straightforward. Patricia, stay out of this. Did you forge my mother's will? The question hung in the air. My father did not answer, could not answer. The silence was its own confession. My mother's face crumpled, not with sadness but with something more complex. Betrayal mixing with dawning horror. The beach house. You sold it. You said we needed the money for the business. We did need the money. My mother's house, Richard. Her voice broke on the last word, grief and rage tangling together. The room erupted, voices overlapping, my mother crying, my father defensive and retreating. The carefully constructed family facade finally, irrevocably, ripping apart at the seams. Vivian's voice cut through the chaos. Wait. What beach house? What are you talking about? Grandma's house in Galveston, I said, my voice calm against the storm. Dad sold it 6 months ago, for $875,000, right around the time Derek proposed to you. I watched Derek's face as I said it, watched the color drain, watched his eyes flick toward the door and then back, calculating, assessing, looking for an exit that was not there. Vivian turned to him. Derek? What is she talking about? But Derek would not meet her eyes. And in that moment, Vivian knew. Maybe not the details, not yet. But she knew something was very wrong. Speaking of Derek, I said, shifting my attention to him directly. There is something else we should discuss. Derek's legs stopped bouncing. His face went still. I do not know what you think you know. I know about your position on Dad's company board. Trident Investment Group lists Richard Shaw as a strategic advisor. Interesting connection for a future son-in-law. That is just business. I work in finance. Richard is in construction. We had some overlapping interests. Overlapping interests? Like knowing about the family's financial situation before you started dating Vivian? Derek tried to laugh, but it came out wrong, strangled. You are being paranoid? Am I? Then explain the prenup you drafted before you even proposed. The one with a clause making any future inheritance joint marital property. Derek's face went white. How do you left the document in the shared wedding folder. Not very careful for a finance professional. Vivian stood up. Derek! What prenup? What is she talking about? Baby, she is twisting things. Did you know about Grandma's money, about the house? Vivian, calm down. Did you know? Derek did not answer. Same silence, same confession. I could have ended them right there. I had the affair evidence in my bag, the emails to Diana, the private room booking, the proof that Derek had never loved Vivian, had only seen her as a path to money that did not even exist anymore. But I held back. Not everything, not yet. There is more, I said quietly. Much more. But I think that is enough for tonight. More? Derek's voice cracked. What do you mean more? I mean that what I have shared tonight is just the beginning. There are other things I have discovered, things that affect everyone in this room. I looked directly at Derek. He looked like he might be sick, but some truths are better shared publicly. Do not you think? The threat landed. Everyone in the room understood. I had leverage, more than I had shown, and I was not afraid to use it. I gathered the documents from the coffee table, placed them back in my folder. I came tonight because you invited me, because you thought you could work this out. But there is nothing to work out. You stole from me. You lied to me. You used me my entire life. Meredith, please. My mother reached toward me. Do not. I stepped back from her hand. You knew, Mom. Maybe not all of it, but enough. You knew I was being used and you said nothing because it was easier. I walked toward the door. Vivian's voice followed me, cracked and desperate. What happens now? To the wedding? That is your decision, not mine. But Derek, the things you said, I told you the truth. What you do with it is up to you. You are really not going to help me? After everything? I paused at the door, looked back at my sister. You uninvited me, Vivian. You called me a loser. Dad gave it a thumbs up. Mom told me not to make things harder. You all made your choices. Now live with them. I walked out without looking back. Got in my car, drove 2 blocks, then pulled over as the adrenaline finally hit, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. You just made a very big mistake. This is not over. Someone in that room was feeding information to whoever was sending these threats. But I did not care anymore. Let them threaten. Let them scramble. Let them panic. In 6 days the wedding would happen or it would not. Either way, I would be there, and this time I would not be standing in the shadows. I drove home through streets I had known my entire life, past the school where I won spelling bees no one attended, past the church where they held Grandma's funeral while hiding her true wishes. This city was full of their lies, layered like sediment over decades. But sediment shifts. Foundations crack. And I had 6 days to decide exactly how much truth I was willing to unleash. They wanted a wedding? Fine. I would give them a wedding they would never forget. 2 days had passed since the Sunday confrontation, and I had spent most of that time watching from a distance. Working from home, ignoring phone calls, monitoring the aftermath through careful observation rather than direct involvement. Ruth kept me updated with brief texts throughout Monday and Tuesday. The family was imploding exactly as I had expected. My mother had not spoken to my father since Sunday night. She was sleeping in the guest room now, refusing to share a bed with the man who forged her mother's will and sold her childhood home without telling her. Vivian had called my mother 17 times, crying, looking for reassurance that no one could give her. Derek had announced he was going on a business trip, which everyone understood was code for hiding until the situation stabilized. My father had tried calling Harold Vance directly, attempting damage control, but Harold refused to speak with him. The walls were closing in from every direction. I sat at my kitchen table Wednesday morning, coffee growing cold beside my laptop, and felt something I had not expected. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just a hollow kind of clarity, watching a structure I had propped up my entire life finally collapse under its own rotten weight. My phone buzzed with a message that surprised me. Vivian, not angry, not accusatory, just 5 words that carried more weight than anything she had said to me in years. Can we talk? Just us. Please. I stared at the message for a long time. Vivian had never said please to me, not once in 30 years of sisterhood. Something had shifted. Against my better judgment, against every instinct telling me to stay away and let her figure things out on her own, I texted back. When? The response came immediately. Today. My apartment. Whenever you can. I thought about Ruth's words from our phone call the previous night. She is not the enemy, Mary. She is the other casualty. I had pushed back. She participated in her own rescue party by throwing me overboard. I know, Ruth said gently, but she did not know what she was participating in. None of us did. Maybe that was true. Maybe Vivian was as much a victim of our parents' manipulation as I was, just shaped differently by the same dysfunction. It did not excuse her cruelty, but it might explain it. And if I was being honest with myself, I was curious. Curious what Vivian looked like when her perfect world crumbled. Curious whether there was anything real underneath the golden child performance she had been giving her whole life. I arrived at Vivian's apartment building at 2 o'clock. High-rise downtown, views of Lady Bird Lake, the kind of place that looked impressive from the outside and cost more than most people could afford. I had paid the deposit for this apartment 4 years ago. Never got it back. The irony was not lost on me as I rode the elevator to the 14th floor. Vivian opened the door before I could knock, like she had been watching through the peephole. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair unwashed and pulled back in a messy knot, eyes swollen from days of crying. The polished Instagram version of my sister was completely gone. What remained was raw, scared, human in a way I had not seen since we were children. You came, she said, her voice rough. I did not think you would, neither did I. The apartment was a mess, which shocked me more than Vivian's appearance. She had always been fastidious about her space, everything arranged for maximum aesthetic impact. Now wedding magazines lay scattered across the floor. Empty wine bottles lined the kitchen counter. A half-packed suitcase sat in the corner, clothes spilling out of it. Derek's things, I realized. He left Monday morning, Vivian said, following my gaze. Said he needed space to think. Space to think about what? About whether he still wants to marry me. After what you said. About the prenup. Her voice cracked on the last word. She moved to the couch and sat down heavily, pulling her knees up to her chest like a child seeking comfort. Is it true? Did he know about Grandma's money? Yes. I believe he did. How? How could he have known? Because Dad told him. They have been working together for over a year. Dad is on his company's advisory board. Vivian's face crumpled. Dad introduced us. He said Derek was a good match. Said he came from a good family. My father handpicked Derek Holloway for my sister, delivered her to him like a package, and Vivian never thought to question why. The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of everything we had never said to each other. Finally, Vivian looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. Is there more? You said at dinner there was more. I hesitated. This was the point of no return. Once I showed her what I had, there would be no taking it back, no pretending things could go back to normal. Are you sure you want to know? I need to know, all of it. I opened my bag and pulled out the printed screenshots. The email thread between Derek and Diana. Every message I had saved, every timestamp, every damning word. I handed the stack to Vivian without commentary. Let her read. Let her draw her own conclusions. She read in silence. I watched her face cycle through emotions like weather patterns. Confusion first, then disbelief, then the slow, horrible recognition of truth. Her hands started shaking about halfway through. By the time she reached the end, tears were streaming down her face. Who is Diana? His co-worker. They dated in college, broke up because neither of them had money. They reconnected about a year ago before he started dating you. Before? He started seeing you after he reconnected with her. The relationship with you was planned from the beginning. A former colleague of Derek's confirmed it. Vivian stared at the emails in her lap, her whole body trembling. He called me needy, desperate for approval. Those are his words, not the truth. But they are true. That is what kills me. He saw exactly what I am, and he used it. There was one more thing she needed to know, one more knife to twist before the wound could start to heal. The photographer told me something, I said carefully. Derek booked a private room at the venue. For the night before the wedding. He paid cash, so there would be no paper trail. Vivian looked up. For what? I think you know. The silence stretched. Understanding dawned in her eyes, horrible and complete. Derek was planning to spend his last night as a single man with Diana. In the venue I had paid for, the night before marrying Vivian. Oh, God. She covered her mouth, lurching forward like she might be sick. I'm going to... She did not finish the sentence. Just sat there, hunched over, breathing in shallow gasps while her entire world restructured itself around betrayal. Her phone rang. The sound made us both jump. Vivian looked at the screen with hollow eyes. It is Derek. Answer it. I cannot answer it. On speaker. Her hands shook as she accepted the call and pressed the speaker button. Derek's voice filled the room, warm and intimate and completely oblivious to his audience. Hey, babe. Sorry I have not called. Things have been crazy. Listen, Diana has been asking about our honeymoon plans. She wants to know if we are still doing Bora Bora in February. Vivian's eyes went wide. I held up my hand. Wait, let him talk. Diana, Vivian said carefully. Your co-worker? Yeah, she is helping me coordinate some stuff. Look, about what your sister said at dinner, it is all bullshit. She is just trying to ruin things because she is jealous of you. Coordinate what kind of stuff? You know, travel stuff. She has got connections. Her voice hardened. Does she have connections to your hotel room the night before our wedding? Dead silence on the other end of the line. Vivian. What? Who told you? Does Diana know you call me needy? That our wedding is just business? Baby, I do not know what Meredith told you, but I am reading your emails, Derek. I am reading them right now. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4. Then a single word, exhaled like a death rattle. Shit. Yeah, shit. Vivian hung up, dropped the phone on the couch like it had burned her. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. The city hummed outside the windows, indifferent to the destruction happening in this expensive apartment overlooking the water. Vivian broke first. Why me? Why did he pick me? Because you were accessible. Because Dad delivered you on a silver platter. But I have nothing. I have never had anything of my own. That is what I do not understand, I said slowly, working through the logic out loud. Derek wanted access to family money. The prenup was designed to capture inheritance. But you were not supposed to inherit anything significant. Grandma's will left everything to me. So why target me? Unless Derek knew about the forged will. The one that gave everything to Mom instead. And Mom would eventually leave it to her daughters, you and me. But Dad probably told Derek I was difficult, unreliable, not worth the investment. So Derek chose the easier daughter. The words hung between us. Vivian, The golden child. The favored one. The daughter who got everything I was denied. She was not special to Derek. She was just easier to manipulate, more desperate for love, more willing to believe. I always wondered why they treated us so differently, Vivian said quietly. Me too. I thought it was because I was special. Mom always said I needed more support, that you were complete and I was still being assembled. I froze. You heard that? Mom said it to me directly. When I was 16, she said I was different because... She stopped. Something crossed her face. A memory surfacing, disturbing the water. Because what? I do not know. She started to say something else, then stopped, changed the subject. But her face looked scared. What did she almost say? Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that changed everything. There was another time. A fight between Mom and Dad. I was maybe 12. I heard Dad yell through the door, "She is not even mine, Patricia. I have given her everything and she is not even mine." The room went cold. The air itself seemed to thicken. She is not even mine. Vivian, I said slowly, did you ever ask them about that? I was 12. I blocked it out, told myself I misheard, but you did not mishear, did you? Her silence was its own answer. Vivian picked up her phone with shaking hands, dialed our mother's number, put it on speaker without asking if I wanted to hear. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice thin with exhaustion. Vivian? Honey, is everything... I need to know something, right now. Know what? You are not making sense. Is Dad my real father? The silence that followed was deafening, stretching, endless. Vivian, where is this coming from? Answer me. More silence. Then our mother's voice changed. Smaller, caught, like a child discovered in a lie. It was a long time ago, before you were born. Richard and I were separated for a few months. I made a mistake. I was lonely. I was scared. And there was someone else, just briefly. Who? It does not matter who. Who? A colleague of your father's. He is not in our lives anymore. Richard agreed to raise you as his own. We never planned to tell you. Vivian dropped the phone. It clattered on the hardwood floor, our mother's voice still coming through the speaker. Vivian, please talk to me. I picked up the phone. She will call you back. Hung up before Mom could respond. The apartment was silent except for the traffic far below. Vivian sat frozen on the couch, staring at nothing, her entire identity dissolving in real time. Everything made sense now. Terrible, devastating sense. Dad's favoritism was not favoritism at all. It was guilt. The special treatment, the inability to deny Vivian anything, the constant flow of money and attention, compensation for the resentment he could never admit, and his coldness toward me, his actual daughter, his biological child. Punishment for being a reminder of the family he thought he had. The family that turned out to be built on lies. I do not know who I am anymore, Vivian whispered. Neither do I. But maybe that is where we start. She looked at me then, really looked at me. For the first time in decades, maybe the first time ever, without the filter of competition or resentment or the roles our parents had assigned us. I am sorry, she said, for the text, for everything. I know, I did not. I did not understand what I was part of. I know that too. It was not forgiveness, not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was acknowledgement. Recognition that we were both casualties of the same war, wounded in different ways by the same people. For now, that was enough. What happens now? Vivian asked. The wedding is in 3 days. That is your choice, not mine. Derek is gone. Dad is not even my... She could not finish the sentence. I do not know what to do, neither do I. But whatever you decide, you should know. I am filing a lawsuit about Grandma's will, and I am going to expose what Dad did, even if it destroys him. He destroyed himself a long time ago. I am just showing people the truth. I left Vivian's apartment as the sun set over Austin, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that felt too beautiful for the ugliness of the day. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from Derek. You have ruined everything. But I am not done. If I am going down, I am taking your whole family with me. See you Saturday. Saturday. The wedding day that was not happening anymore. Or was it? Derek was planning something. Something desperate. Something public. I thought about warning Vivian. Thought about calling my father, my mother, anyone who might be in the blast radius of whatever Derek was planning. Then I remembered. Goodbye, loser. Thumbs up. You are dead to me. They had made their choices. Now they could live with the consequences. The golden child had just learned she was built on a lie. The responsible daughter had just learned her burden was punishment for being real. And somewhere out there, Derek Holloway was planning something desperate. In 3 days, everything would come to a head, at an event that no longer had a bride or a groom or a purpose. But it would still have an audience. And audiences deserve a show. Saturday morning arrived with a clarity that felt almost supernatural. The day that was supposed to be Vivian's wedding had transformed into something else entirely. My father, desperate to salvage appearances, had managed to keep the venue booking at Cedar Grove Estate. He converted the wedding into what he called a family celebration dinner. His spin to the 120 guests who had already planned to attend was that we were celebrating our family's resilience during a difficult time. The reality was simpler and uglier. Richard Shaw needed to maintain his reputation in front of the business partners and investors who had been invited to his daughter's wedding. The show had to go on, even if the performance had changed. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror at 10 in the morning, studying my reflection. Simple black dress. Elegant but understated. Hair pulled back, controlled. The kind of outfit you wear when you want people to focus on your words, not your appearance. In my bag sat a folder containing everything I had gathered over the past 2 weeks. Both wills, signature comparisons, the emails between Derek and Diana, financial records from Shaw Construction, a USB drive loaded with screenshots, the nuclear option ready to deploy. My phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. Are you really coming tonight? Yes. Derek texted me this morning. He is coming too. He says he has something to share with Dad's business partners. The threat from Wednesday echoed in my memory. If I am going down, I am taking your whole family with me. See you Saturday. Derek was planning to expose the Shaw family's financial ruin publicly. The bankruptcy filings, the lawsuits, the liens, everything my father had been hiding from his investors and partners for years. I typed back to Vivian. Then I guess we will both have something to share. I set down the phone and looked at myself in the mirror one more time. Derek wanted to burn down the house. Fine, but I would decide which rooms caught fire first. Cedar Grove Estate glowed against the evening sky when I arrived at 6:45, the venue I had originally booked, the one I had canceled. My father must have paid a premium to rebook it on such short notice, money he could not afford, for an event that was nothing but performance. Valets stood in the circular driveway. String lights twinkled in the oak trees lining the entrance. Chamber music drifted from inside, something classical and respectable. The whole scene looked like a photograph from a luxury lifestyle magazine. Perfect on the surface, hollow underneath. I approached the entrance and immediately noticed something unusual. 2 security guards flanked the front doors. That was not standard for Cedar Grove. One of them held up a hand as I approached. Name, please? Meredith Shaw. He checked a clipboard, frowned, consulted with his partner through a radio. I do not see you on the list, ma'am. Check again. I am the daughter. More radio crackling, whispered conversation. Then he nodded. You can go in, but Mr. Shaw would like a word before you enter the main room. My father was waiting in the foyer, alone. He looked older than he had on Sunday, like the past week had aged him years. His face was tight with controlled panic, his eyes betraying what his posture tried to hide. Meredith, I am surprised you came. Why would you be surprised? It is a family celebration, is it not? After everything that has happened. After everything you did, you mean? He flinched. This is not the time or place for, you are right. The main room is the time and place. Excuse me. I walked past him before he could respond. He did not try to stop me. He could not here, not in front of his guests. The ballroom was arranged for elegance, round tables draped in white linen, elaborate floral centerpieces, a stage at the far end with a microphone set up for toasts. 120 guests in formal attire filled the space, champagne glasses glinting under the chandeliers. I scanned the room, identifying the key players. James Whitmore, major investor in Shaw Construction, stood near the bar with two other men I did not recognize. The Delgado brothers, the subcontractors who were suing my father for unpaid invoices, clustered in a corner looking uncomfortable. Margaret Chen, real estate developer and one of Dad's biggest clients, held court near the windows. These were not just friends gathered for a family event. These were the pillars of my father's professional reputation, the people whose trust kept Shaw Construction limping along despite its debts. And my father had gathered them all in one room. I spotted my mother near the kitchen entrance, holding a champagne glass she had not touched, talking to no one. Vivian stood by the windows, pale and watchful, her eyes fixed on the main doors, waiting. We were all waiting. Vivian saw me and crossed the room quickly. "You actually came." "I said I would. What are you going to do?" "That depends on what Derek does. He is not here yet, but he texted me. He is on his way." Then we wait. I noticed a projector screen behind the stage, the kind usually used for slideshows at events like this. Wedding photos, family memories, tributes to the happy couple. It sat dark and waiting, connected to a laptop on a small table nearby. I had a USB drive in my purse, screenshots of Derek's emails, financial documents, the forged will comparison. If I needed to go nuclear, the delivery system was already in place. The question was whether Derek would force my hand. At 7:30, the main doors opened, and Derek Holloway walked in like he owned the room. Perfectly tailored suit, hair slicked back, smile sharp enough to cut glass. He was not here to apologize or reconcile. He was here to destroy, and he had not come alone. Diana walked beside him, blonde and polished, her hand possessively wrapped around his arm. They brought the mistress to the family event. The audacity was almost impressive. Derek's eyes swept the room, found me, and his smile widened. He walked directly toward where I stood. "Meredith, I was hoping you would be here. I am sure you were. I hear you have been busy, digging through records, talking to lawyers. I hear you have been busy too, hiding, scheming, bringing your girlfriend to your own engagement party." His smile tightened. "She is not my girlfriend anymore. She is my fiancée. We got engaged yesterday." Behind me, I heard Vivian make a small sound. Half gasp, half sob. Derek ignored her completely, his attention focused on me like a predator sizing up prey. He leaned closer, dropping his voice so only I could hear. "Here is what is going to happen. In about 30 minutes, I am going to take that microphone and tell everyone in this room about Shaw Construction's financial situation. The lawsuits, the liens, the fact that Richard Shaw is 6 months from bankruptcy. Why would you do that? Because your father used me. He promised me access to family money that does not exist. He handed me his daughter like a bargaining chip, and when it all fell apart, he blamed me. So this is revenge. This is justice. I am just telling the truth. The truth." I almost laughed. "You would not know truth if it proposed to you." His eyes hardened. "You think you are clever? You think exposing me to Vivian changes anything? I know things about this family that would destroy all of you. Business fraud, tax evasion, forged documents." I watched his face as he spoke, calculating. He was going to expose everything regardless of what I did. If I waited, he controlled the narrative. If I moved first, I controlled it. My father would be humiliated tonight no matter what. The only question was who shaped the story people would remember. I caught Vivian's eye across the room. A question passed between us. Do we let him win? Vivian's jaw set. A tiny shake of her head. That was all I needed. I turned away from Derek without another word, and walked toward the stage. The chamber music stopped when I picked up the microphone. Conversations paused. Heads turned. My father started pushing through the crowd, his face twisted with alarm. "Meredith, what are you—" But I was already speaking, my voice steady and clear through the sound system. "Good evening, everyone. For those who do not know me, I am Meredith Shaw, Richard's daughter, the one you probably have not heard much about." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. My father froze mid-stride. Derek watched with a mixture of confusion and anticipation, uncertain whether to stop me or let me dig my own grave. I know this was supposed to be a celebration. And it will be. But first, I think we all deserve to hear the truth about why we are really here tonight. Whispers spread like brush fire. Derek's smirk faltered. My mother's champagne glass trembled in her hand. I pulled the first document from my folder and held it up. My grandmother, Eleanor Shaw, passed away 2.5 years ago. She was one of the sharpest women I have ever known. She planned carefully for her death, including her will. This is that will. The original one, filed with Harold Vance, her attorney. In it, she left her beach house and her savings, over $1.2 million, to me. The murmurs grew louder. James Whitmore set down his drink, his expression sharpening. But that will never made it to probate. Instead, a different will appeared. One that gave everything to my mother, conveniently making my father the financial beneficiary. I pulled out the second document. This is the will that was filed. Notice the signature. Notice the date. According to forensic analysis, this signature is not my grandmother's handwriting. I looked directly at my father. My father forged my grandmother's will. He stole my inheritance. And then he sold her beach house, her most treasured possession, to cover his failing business. My father found his voice. "Meredith, you are misrepresenting, am I? Harold Vance is prepared to testify. Aunt Ruth witnessed the original will. The Galveston County Probate Office has records showing you withdrew the original document and replaced it with your version. This is a family matter. No, you made it a business matter when you stole $1 million to prop up your company." I looked out at the crowd. These people deserve to know what kind of man they have been investing with. I turned my attention to Derek, who had gone very still. But I am not the only one who has been lied to. And my father is not the only one in this room who has built his life on deception. I watched his smirk die completely. Derek Holloway came into this family with a plan. He knew about the inheritance. He knew about the financial situation. Because he and my father have been working together, Derek serves as a financial advisor for Shaw Construction. Derek drafted a prenuptial agreement that would make any inheritance my sister received joint marital property. He was not marrying for love. He was marrying for access. I pulled out the email screenshots. And while planning this marriage, he was maintaining a relationship with Diana Mercer, the woman standing next to him right now. Gasps erupted through the ballroom. Diana's face went white. These emails show their affair spanning the entire engagement, including plans to meet at this very venue the night before the wedding. Derek's voice cracked. "You cannot prove—" "I can. I have timestamps, hotel records, testimony from a former colleague. You cannot. You destroyed yourself. I am just providing the evidence." Diana ripped her hand from Derek's arm, her face twisted with fury. "You told me she did not know. You said it was handled. Diana, wait." But she was already moving toward the exit, heels clicking against the floor. Derek stood alone in the middle of the ballroom, exposed and unraveling, while 120 witnesses watched his facade crumble. The room erupted in chaos. Business partners clustered together, whispering urgently. James Whitmore had his phone out, already calling someone. The Delgado brothers approached my father with hard expressions, sensing blood in the water. Margaret Chen was recording video on her phone. My mother had vanished from the room entirely. My father pushed toward the stage, his composure completely shattered. "You have made your point. Now stop. I am done, Dad. But your business partners might have questions. I suggest you answer honestly, for once." I set down the microphone and walked off the stage. The crowd parted around me, some faces shocked, some admiring, most simply stunned. I passed Vivian at the door. She caught my arm. "Thank you." For what? For ending it. I could not. I nodded once and kept walking. Outside, the evening air was cool against my skin. Crickets sang in the oak trees. The string lights twinkled on, indifferent to the destruction happening inside. I checked my phone as I reached my car. Someone had already posted video from the ballroom. The caption read, "Shaw Construction CEO accused of forging mother-in-law's will. Full speech. 847 views in 3 minutes. Still climbing." It was out there now. No taking it back. I got in my car and sat in the darkness for a moment. The weight of what I had done settled over me like a blanket. Not guilt, not regret. Just finality. The adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. My phone lit up with a text from Ruth. I watched the whole thing through Margaret Chen's livestream. "Your grandmother would be so proud." The tears I had been holding back finally fell. Not from sadness, from release. From the feeling of finally being seen after a lifetime of invisibility. I started the engine and drove away from Cedar Grove Estate, leaving the chaos behind. The secret was out. The lies were exposed. And somewhere in that ballroom, an empire built on theft and manipulation was finally collapsing under its own weight. But exposure was not the same as closure, and justice was not the same as healing. The hard part, the part where I figured out who I was without the fight, that was still coming. 2 weeks had passed since Cedar Grove and I had spent most of that time watching from a distance, working from home when I could focus, taking long walks when I could not, monitoring the aftermath through news alerts and careful observation rather than direct involvement. The storm I released that Saturday night had been tearing through everything in its path, and I found a strange peace in simply letting it run its course. I sat at my kitchen table on a Monday morning, coffee cooling beside my laptop, scrolling through the coverage that had accumulated since the event. The video from Cedar Grove had gone viral within hours of being posted. Local news picked it up first with breathless headlines. Austin Construction CEO accused of will fraud at family event. Then the business journals caught the scent of blood. Shaw Construction faces investor exodus after public scandal. Social media had done the rest, the comment sections filling with stories from strangers who recognized something familiar in my words. Other families, other betrayals, other responsible daughters who had been drained dry by the people who should have protected them. One comment stood out from the thousands. Posted under a news article, it read simply, "I watched this 3 times. This woman said everything I have wanted to say to my own family for 40 years. Meredith Shaw is my hero." 4,200 likes. Hundreds of replies underneath, each one a variation of the same theme. Women sharing their own stories of being overlooked, exploited, dismissed. Women who had carried their families on their backs and received nothing but criticism in return. Women who had finally found permission in my public reckoning to acknowledge their own private pain. I did not do this to become anyone's hero. I did it to reclaim what was stolen from me. But something in that comment cracked me open a little. All those years of feeling alone in my family's dysfunction, and here were thousands of strangers telling me I was never alone at all. We just had not found each other yet. The business collapse happened faster than I expected. Within 48 hours of Cedar Grove, James Whitmore pulled his investment from Shaw Construction. $340,000, gone with a single phone call to his financial advisor. The Delgado brothers accelerated their lawsuit, filing for summary judgment now that the company's instability was public knowledge. Margaret Chen quietly canceled 3 pending contracts, her loyalty to my father evaporating the moment his reputation became a liability rather than an asset. Other dominoes followed in quick succession. Suppliers demanded cash on delivery instead of the 30-day terms my father had negotiated over years of relationship building. Credit lines froze. Employees with options started looking for exits, the best ones finding new positions before the ship finished sinking. Ruth kept me updated through brief texts. her tone carefully neutral but unable to hide a certain grim satisfaction. Last Wednesday, I saw the headline I had been expecting. Shaw Construction LLC files for Chapter 11, Bankruptcy Protection. The article detailed $2.3 million in combined debt, more than I had estimated from public records alone. My father had been hemorrhaging money for years, hiding the bleeding behind pride and borrowed time. The company he built over 30 years, destroyed in 30 days. Not by me, by his own choices. I just showed people the cracks he had been plastering over. Derek's downfall was swift and complete, barely worth the mental space I had been giving it. Diana left him the night of Cedar Grove, blocking his number and moving out of their shared apartment before he could even attempt an explanation. Trident Investment Group accepted his resignation 3 days later, corporate speak for being fired before he could do any more damage to their reputation. His LinkedIn profile went private. His Instagram disappeared entirely. The man who had planned to marry his way into wealth ended up with nothing but debt, humiliation, and the burned bridges of everyone who had ever trusted him. He sent me one final message 5 days after the event, a text from a number I should have blocked sooner. "You think you won? You destroyed a family. Hope you are proud of yourself." I read it once, did not respond, blocked the number. I did not destroy a family, I exposed one. The destruction was always there, hiding beneath the surface like rot under fresh paint. I just let daylight in. Jenna texted a few days later with an update. Diana is telling everyone she was the victim, that Derek manipulated her too. I asked if Jenna believed it. "Hell no," she replied, "but it is a convenient story. Some people never take responsibility. That is not my problem anymore." The meeting with Carla Reyes happened on a Friday afternoon at Meridian Legal Group's office in Galveston. She greeted me in the lobby with something I had rarely seen on an attorney's face, a genuine smile. "We won," she said simply. The words took a moment to register. My petition to contest the will had been granted. The judge ruled that the superseding will showed clear evidence of fraud. Harold Vance's testimony had been decisive, his detailed records and clear memory confirming everything I had claimed. The forensic handwriting analysis sealed the case, professional experts concluding that the signature on the filed will was inconsistent with Eleanor Shaw's documented handwriting patterns. "The original will has been reinstated," Carla explained as we sat in her conference room. "Effective immediately, you are the legal owner of your grandmother's estate." She walked me through the details. The beach house property was gone, sold to a third-party buyer in good faith, but the proceeds of that sale, $875,000, had been frozen in escrow pending resolution. That money was mine now. The savings account, $412,000 that had sat untouched since Eleanor's death, was being released to my control. Combined total, $1,287,000. My hands trembled slightly as I signed the paperwork. After 2 years of not knowing, after a lifetime of being overlooked and undervalued, I finally had what Eleanor wanted me to have. "The beach house itself is gone," Carla said gently. "It was sold to a third party in good faith. We cannot undo that sale, I know. But the money is still Grandma's legacy. And now it can do what she intended." "What is that?" "Give me a foundation to stand on. One no one can take away." My father called that Saturday evening, the first direct contact since Cedar Grove. I let it go to voicemail, not ready to hear his voice in real time, not sure I would ever be ready. His message played through my phone's speaker while I sat in my darkened living room, listening to a man I no longer recognized. Meredith. His voice sounded nothing like the commanding presence I grew up with. Smaller, hollowed out, defeated. "I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I need to say this. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. I convinced myself it was for the family, that Eleanor would have understood. She would not have. I know that now." A long pause on the recording, filled with the sound of his breathing. "The company is gone. The house is probably next. Your mother is talking to divorce lawyers." He paused again. I am not asking for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But Meredith, I need help. Financially. Just enough to... I stopped the voicemail. I already knew how it ended. The same way every conversation with my father had ended for 34 years, with him asking me to sacrifice so he could survive. I called him back. He answered on the first ring, hope bleeding through his voice. Meredith? Dad, that has always been the problem, has it not? I was always the only one. The only one who paid? The only one who sacrificed? The only one you could count on to clean up your messes? Meredith, please. You had my entire life to treat me like family. You chose not to. Now live with that choice. I hung up. Did not feel guilty. Did not feel triumphant either. Just finished. Like closing a book I had been forced to read for far too long. Vivian texted the next afternoon. Can we meet? Not about Dad or the money, about something else. I agreed, curious what she could possibly want to discuss that did not involve the wreckage our family had become. We met at a coffee shop near the university, neutral territory, neither of us ready to visit the other's home. She looked different than she had at Cedar Grove, not the polished Instagram version, not the broken mess from the aftermath, something in between, realer. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. What did you want to talk about? She took a breath, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup like she needed something to hold on to. I have been doing research about my biological father. My chest tightened. The revelation from that day in her apartment still felt raw, a wound that had not fully healed for either of us. Did you find anything? His name was Thomas Riley. He died 8 years ago. Car accident. But he had a sister. She is still alive. Living in San Antonio. Are you going to contact her? I do not know. Part of me wants to know who he was. Part of me is terrified of what I will find. What are you afraid of? Vivian was quiet for a moment, staring into her coffee. That he was a good man. That I missed knowing someone who might have actually loved me for me. Not because of guilt or obligation. I recognized that fear. The fear of discovering you had been cheated out of something real. The fear that the life you lived was smaller than the life you could have had. If you decide to reach out, I said slowly, I will go with you. If you want. Her eyes lifted to mine, wet with tears she was trying not to shed. You would do that? After everything? You did not forge the will. You did not plan Derek's scheme. You were a victim too, just a different kind. I was still cruel to you. Yes. But people can change. I have to believe that. Otherwise, what is the point? She reached across the table and took my hand. The first genuine touch between us in years. Not forgiveness, not yet. But the possibility of it. A door cracked open instead of slammed shut. Ruth arrived at my apartment Monday evening carrying homemade soup and a bottle of wine. You have been through hell, she announced as I let her in. You need to eat something that is not takeout. The first time anyone had taken care of me in weeks, maybe months, maybe years. We ate together in comfortable silence, the kind that does not need to be filled with words. Ruth did not ask about the lawsuit or the money or the family. She asked about my work, my apartment, whether I was sleeping. Normal questions. Caring questions. The kind I had forgotten people could ask without wanting something in return. I talked to Harold Vance yesterday, Ruth said eventually, setting down her wine glass. How is he? Relieved. He carried guilt for 2 years. Felt like he failed Eleanor by not fighting harder after she died. It was not his fault. Dad was very thorough. Richard was always thorough. That is what made him dangerous. She paused, her expression softening. Eleanor would be so proud of you, Mary. Not because you won, because you stood up. She always said you were the brave one. I never felt brave. That is usually how brave people feel. They are just too stubborn to quit. What are you going to do with the money? Ruth asked after a while. I am not sure yet. but I know what I am not going to do. Let anyone else control it. Good. That is exactly what Eleanor wanted. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like peace. Late that night, after Ruth had gone home and the apartment was quiet, I checked my voicemail. My mother had called while I was having dinner, and I had let it go unanswered. Now, in the stillness, I pressed play. Her voice came through the speaker, cracked and small, nothing like the woman who had told me not to make things harder. Meredith. I know I do not deserve to ask anything of you. I have failed you in ways I am only beginning to understand. A long pause, shaky breath. I did not know about the will. I swear I did not. But I knew other things. I knew you were being used. I knew Richard treated you differently. And I said nothing because it was easier, because silence was safer than confrontation. I am not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know. I see you now. I see what you did for this family, and what we did to you. I am sorry, Mary. I am so sorry. The message ended. I sat with it for a long time, turning it over in my mind like a stone. Was it genuine? Strategic? An attempt at manipulation dressed up as remorse? Did it matter? Understanding the motive did not change what happened. Knowing she was sorry did not erase the years of neglect. But something in her voice sounded real. Something that might be the beginning of actual change, if I ever decided to give her the chance to prove it. I did not delete the voicemail, did not save it either. Just let it exist in the limbo of my inbox, like the complicated, unresolved thing it represented. Tomorrow I would make decisions. Tonight I would rest. The fight was over. The healing was just beginning. I fell asleep that night without nightmares for the first time in weeks. The money was secured. The truth was told. The family that used me for 34 years was finally facing the consequences of their choices. But closure was not an ending. It was a doorway. And I still had to decide what I was walking toward. The beach house was gone, but Galveston was still there. Grandma Eleanor's memory was still there. And maybe, just maybe, a future I could finally call my own. 3 months had passed since Cedar Grove and I woke most mornings now to the sound of waves. The rental cottage I had found sat just off Seawall Boulevard in Galveston, a modest 2-bedroom place with weathered shingles and a porch that faced the Gulf of Mexico. It was not Grandma Eleanor's house. That was gone forever, sold to strangers who would never know the woman who had loved it. But the cottage was close to where her house had stood, close enough that I could walk to the spot every morning and feel her presence in the salt air and the endless rhythm of the tide. I stood on the porch with my coffee, watching the sun rise over the water, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that felt too beautiful to be accidental. I had quit my job at Morrison and Klein 2 weeks after the lawsuit was won. Gave my notice, thanked Linda for 8 years of opportunities, and walked out of the building with nothing but a box of personal items and a freedom I had never experienced before. I did not need the salary anymore. More importantly, I did not need the identity that came with it. Steady Mary, reliable Mary, the one who shows up and fixes problems and never asks for anything in return. That version of me had served her purpose. It was time to find out who else I could be. Every morning followed the same ritual now. Wake with the sun, coffee on the porch, walk along the seawall to the spot where Grandma Eleanor's house used to stand. There was a public bench there, facing where her kitchen window would have been, and I sat on it most days for at least an hour, talking to her in my mind, telling her what had happened, what was changing, what I was still trying to figure out. I found it, Grandma. Everything you left me. And I am trying to understand what to do with it. The wind off the Gulf felt like an answer sometimes, or maybe just permission to keep searching without knowing exactly what I was looking for. My days had a new shape now, one I was still learning to inhabit. Morning walks that stretched into hours, afternoons reading on the beach, novels instead of financial reports, stories about people who had nothing to do with my family's dysfunction. Evenings cooking simple meals, experimenting with recipes Eleanor used to make, the smell of garlic and rosemary filling the small kitchen, and triggering memories I no longer tried to suppress. I talked to Ruth every week on the phone, her voice a steady anchor to the parts of my past worth keeping. Vivian texted occasionally, careful messages that neither of us quite knew how to handle yet. The distance between us was still vast, but it felt navigable now, like a bridge that might be built if we both kept showing up with materials. Last week I found something unexpected. A small antique shop 3 blocks from the cottage, the kind of place crammed with other people's discarded treasures. In the window sat a rocking chair almost identical to the one Eleanor had kept on her porch. Same weathered wood, same curved arms, same pattern in the slats. I stared at it for 10 minutes before going inside. Bought it for $200 without negotiating, carried it home in pieces, and reassembled it on my own porch facing the water. Some things could not be recovered. But echoes could be found if you knew where to look. I did not feel healed exactly. That word implied an ending, a moment where the wound closed and became a scar you could forget about. What I felt was more like learning to live with an injury that had finally stopped bleeding. The pain was still there, would probably always be there in some form, but it no longer defined every breath. There was space now for other things, for quiet mornings and good books, and the possibility that the future might hold something besides obligation. Ruth kept me updated on the wreckage I had left behind, though I asked for less detail as the weeks passed. Shaw Construction officially dissolved last month, its assets liquidated, its debts partially settled through bankruptcy proceedings. My father was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Round Rock now, a suburb north of Austin where no one knew his name or his history. Ruth said he had stopped going out, stopped answering calls from old friends, stopped pretending that things might turn around. No one visited him. My mother had filed for divorce, the proceedings apparently amicable given how little was left to divide. The family house in Westlake Hills was on the market, priced to sell quickly. I drove by once, saw the sign in the yard, felt nothing. Just another building I used to know. The criminal investigation Ruth had mentioned ended 2 weeks ago. The district attorney decided not to pursue charges against my father, citing insufficient evidence of intent to defraud. Harold Vance was disappointed. I was neutral. My father would not go to prison for what he did. But he had lost everything else. His reputation, his company, his marriage, his daughters. Sometimes consequences did not come from courtrooms. Sometimes they came from the people you betrayed finally walking away. That was a life sentence too, in its own way. Derek had moved to Phoenix, according to Jenna's occasional updates. Starting over, apparently. Diana was engaged to someone else, 3 months after fleeing Cedar Grove with mascara running down her face. The scheme artists had moved on to new marks, new schemes, new lives. I did not think about them much anymore. They were not worth the mental space. Vivian knocked on my cottage door on a Saturday afternoon, overnight bag in hand, looking nervous and hopeful in equal measure. I had given her the address weeks ago, but had not expected her to actually use it. I hope it is okay that I came. Ruth told me where you were. It is okay. Come in. We sat on the porch together, her in the deck chair and me in Eleanor's rocking chair, watching the waves roll in while we figured out what to say to each other. Vivian had been in therapy twice a week since Cedar Grove, processing everything that had been dumped on her in the span of a few days. She reached out to Thomas Riley's sister, a woman named Catherine who lived in San Antonio. They had exchanged emails, shared photographs, planned to meet in person next month. She sent me a picture of him, Vivian said quietly. I have his eyes. That must be strange. It is. But also grounding somehow. Like there is a piece of myself I did not know existed. She turned to look at me, her expression serious in a way I was still getting used to seeing from her. I need to say something, properly. You do not have to. I do. The text I sent. Goodbye, loser. I have thought about it every day since. How casual it was, how cruel, like you were nothing. I waited, letting her find the words she needed. I was so desperate to belong, to be chosen, that I threw away the one person who actually saw me, Not the golden child, not Dad's favorite, just me. Tears were streaming down her face now. I am sorry, Mary. I am so sorry. I did not say it was okay. It was not. I did not say I forgave her. Forgiveness was a process, not a moment, and we had years of damage to work through. Instead, I reached over and took her hand. I know you are. And I am glad you are here. We talked about our mother eventually, because avoiding the subject would have felt like another form of dishonesty. Have you talked to her? Vivian asked. No, not since her voicemail. She asks about you. Every time I see her. What does she say? That she misses you. That she understands if you never want to speak to her again. That she is proud of you. I stared out at the water, watching a pelican dive for fish in the shallows. Proud of me for what? For standing up, for being strong enough to do what she never could. Vivian was quiet for a moment, then added something I had not expected. She told me something. About why she stayed silent all those years. I am not sure I want to know. She said she was afraid of him. Dad, not physically, but the way he could make her feel small, worthless, like she owed him everything for accepting me. That does not excuse— No, it does not. But it explains. And I have learned that understanding is not the same as excusing. Will you ever talk to her? Vivian asked after a while. I do not know. Maybe. When I am ready. She is not expecting anything. She just waits. Then she can keep waiting. That is not cruelty. It is boundary. I know the difference now, Vivian said softly. I am learning it too. Ruth came to visit the next day, arriving with homemade soup, a bottle of wine, and a photo album I had never seen before. Found this in Eleanor's storage unit, she said as she settled onto the couch. The one Richard did not know about. Another secret. But this one was a gift. The album spanned decades. Photographs I had never seen, capturing a grandmother I had only known in her final years. Eleanor as a young woman, radiant and sharp-eyed. Eleanor with baby Patricia in her arms, looking exhausted and proud. Eleanor traveling through Europe with her late husband before he disappointed her in all the ways husbands could. And then, near the middle of the album, a photograph that stopped my breath. Eleanor with a small child on this very beach, building sandcastles in the shadow of her house. The child was maybe 4 years old, blonde pigtails and a bright smile, completely absorbed in the task of shaping wet sand into towers. Me. I was 4 years old. I do not remember this. You were so small, Ruth said gently. But Eleanor talked about that trip for years, said it was the first time she knew you were special. Tucked between the final pages was a letter, handwritten in Eleanor's unmistakable script. Not addressed to anyone specific, just labeled, Thoughts on Family. I read it slowly, my throat tight, while Ruth sat beside me in supportive silence. One line stood out from the rest, words that felt like they had been waiting decades for me to find them. Family is not who you are born to. Family is who you choose to become with. I read it 3 times, memorized it. Grandma was still teaching me, even now. The decision about what to do with the inheritance came to me slowly over the following weeks, crystallizing like salt deposits on beach glass. The money sat in accounts, waiting, and I had considered all the safe options. Investments, real estate, the kind of choices that old Mary would have made, the responsible one, the steady one, the one who planned for security above all else. But safe choices were what got me here in the first place. Playing by rules that only applied to me while everyone else did whatever they wanted. I was going to buy a house in Galveston. Not Eleanor's house, that was gone forever, but something nearby. A place that was mine, built on the foundation she had given me. And I was going to do something else, something that felt right in a way I could not fully explain. A small foundation. Grants for women rebuilding their lives after family betrayal. Legal fees for will contests, deposits for apartments, First and last month's rent for people starting over with nothing but determination. The Eleanor Shaw Foundation for New Beginnings. It would not change the world, but it might change a few lives. And that felt like exactly what Eleanor would have wanted. I walked the beach that evening as the sun set behind me, waves rolling in with the same rhythm they had followed for thousands of years. 3 months since Cedar Grove. A lifetime since that text message. You are not invited to the wedding. Goodbye, loser. The words that started everything. Or maybe just ended something that needed to end. I thought about what I had learned through all of this. Boundaries are not walls. They are doorways. They let you choose what enters and what stays out. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And you should not have to. Being the responsible one is not a virtue if it comes at the cost of being seen. Forgiveness is not required. But healing is possible without it. Family can be chosen, rebuilt, redefined. It does not have to match the one you were born into. That text message, goodbye loser, was meant to dismiss me, to make me disappear, to remind me that I did not matter enough to include. Instead, it freed me. They thought they were cutting me loose. They were actually cutting me free. Every ending is also a beginning. Every door that closes opens another. Grandma Eleanor knew that. She spent her whole life walking through doors that others thought were closed. Now I was doing the same. 1 month later, I stood on the porch of my own house. 3 bedrooms, garden in the back, view of the Gulf from every window. The rocking chair from the antique shop sat facing the water. Eleanor's photo album rested on the bookshelf inside. Ruth visited every other weekend now. Vivian came last month and helped me plant flowers in the garden. The first time we had done something together that was not weighted with conflict or competition. My mother sent a card for my birthday, unsigned. Just thinking of you, written in her careful handwriting. I kept it. Did not respond. But I kept it. The Eleanor Shaw Foundation had filed its paperwork and awarded its first grant last week. A woman in Houston, 62 years old, discovered her brother had embezzled her portion of their mother's estate. She could not afford a lawyer until we stepped in. She called me crying after we approved her application. I thought no one would believe me. I believe you. And now you have help. That was Eleanor's legacy, finally doing what she intended. Helping women like me, like her, like all of us who had been told our whole lives that we did not deserve to take up space. We deserved it. We had always deserved it. And now we had someone in our corner. I stood on my porch that morning, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint the water gold. A life I built from the wreckage of lies. Not perfect, not complete, but mine. And that was everything. That is my story. Or at least, that is where it is now. Stories like this do not really end. They just reach a place where you can finally breathe. I shared this because I know I am not the only one. I have read thousands of comments since that video went viral. Thousands of women who have lived their own versions of this story. Different names, different betrayals, but the same weight, the same silence, the same question running through your head at 3 a.m. Am I crazy? Or is this really happening? You are not crazy. It is really happening, and you are not alone. So tell me, where are you watching from right now? What part of this story stayed with you the most? I read every single comment, and your stories matter too. If this reached you, if it made you feel seen even for a moment, consider subscribing. There are more stories coming, more women who found their voice, more families who hid their secrets, more responsible daughters who finally said enough. Because every time we share these stories, we remind someone else that they deserve better, and it is never too late to claim it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and wherever you are, whatever you are facing, I hope you find your new shore too. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.